of wealth. And I don't think concentrated wealth is inherently a bad thing, mind you. It's important to have investment capital concentrated. But that said, in the format of regulatory capture and, the state-generated means by which to artificially concentrate and cartelize industry, this is not just the amassment of wealth. This is amassment of wealth by way of prevention of others amassing wealth. So this greatly intensifies economic inequality. And in the absence of a state, by default, what you have is absolute free markets, laissez-faire. And as what I was just saying illustrates, the more free market you have, the more laissez-faire the economy is, the more dispersed each respective industry tends to be.
Yes. I completely 100% agree with everything he said.
I can imagine for restaurants, a laissez-faire approach wouldn't really hurt, because but what about industries where sort of the more market share and the more powerful you get, the more easier it is? You know how in video games like Civ 5 and
you're talking about,
like that,
correct me, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm pretty sure I know what argument you're making. Are you talking about economy of scale?
yeah,
Where up to a
yes.
So up to a certain point, I've written a 30-page chapter about that. So up to a certain point, you have a diminishing of the cost of production per unit as you scale up production. You're able to leverage things like bulk discounts and stuff like that. If, for example, if you're buying 10 million pounds of steel or 10,000 pounds of steel, you're going to be paying less per pound than if you're buying 10 pounds of steel. For reasons. The problem with that is that it does, up to a certain point, lower costs of production per unit and give business A an advantage over business B, where business A is operating at a larger scale than B, which is a very small business. This is all true. However, the part that often gets missed and completely neglected, and is of utmost importance, is that these advantages do not scale infinitely. So, for example, there is no amount of steel you can buy where it's not like you can buy 10 million pounds of steel and now it costs 1 cent per 20 pounds. That's not viable. In other words, so bulk discounts can only get you so far. And as you scale up, eventually you hit an optimum efficiency point. This is the point at which, if you were any smaller or much smaller, you would be less efficient. Your cost per unit would be higher. But if you were larger, they would, for a different set of reasons, they would also be higher. Your cost would also be higher per unit.
Diseconomies of scale. It's called diseconomies of scale. So,
yes.
Stuff like bureaucracy, the economic calculation problem, and, just generally, optimal, competition, whatever.
Right. So as you scale up past a certain point, you find that bottlenecks become much more pronounced. Things like limitations in manufacturing efficiency with a particular stage of the process or something. It becomes greatly intensified as you try to scale up the operation. You have an increased layer of separation between upper level management and lower level operations. You have more moving parts bumping into each other, figuratively and literally. So your operation becomes much more costly. Now, on a free market, the outcome of the implication of that is that you're not going to find massive businesses, that are monopolizing industries and so on. They'll be outcompeted in price by their smaller and more efficient competitors. Note, smaller does not mean mom and pop shop. It just means smaller than that giant megacorp. One that's closer to the optimum efficiency point. So that is to say, businesses at the optimum efficiency point on the free market will always outcompete businesses that are larger than the optimum efficiency point, or smaller for that matter. But with the state, this gets completely flipped upside down. With the state, large mega corporations, the biggest players in an industry, players that are oftentimes way past the diseconomy of scale point, They're able
You
to
okay?
compensate for their disadvantage by using the state to impose onerous costs on their competitors and raise their costs, which raises their prices to prevent the big megacorp from being outcompeted. They're also able to make their competitors, and for that matter, make you and me, subsidize corporate welfare and corporate bailouts and so on. For example, not almost every, but many Walmarts that
Bro
that have
almost
opened
died. Give him
are
some
given
water.
a direct governmental incentive. The government pays Walmart to open a Walmart here.
Yeah.
And in many instances, they're putting
You
them
need
in
some
towns
water?
that it doesn't actually, where it doesn't make economic sense to put a Walmart there. Nothing against Walmart per se, but so if you don't have the state, then the problem of diseconomy of scale can no longer be compensated for through political violence. Now you have to simply constrain your business to an efficient size. And in almost every industry, an efficient size doesn't mean, giant monopolistic market share where you own all the industry or 5 players own all the industry or something. Generally speaking, it's far lower. This is especially true in industries that have a pronounced fixed cost and industries that are very labor intensive in their costs and so on. For example, like security is one that comes up in ANCAP contexts a lot. Security is a very labor intensive industry. You can't get bulk discounts on labor. So diseconomy of scale would be more pronounced. Getting bulk discounts on things in security, such as walkie-talkies or something, maybe pistols, isn't going to take you that far when most of the cost is labor. And there is no bulk discount on labor. So all this to say, I think that in the Ancap society, economies of scale will of course still exist, but so will diseconomy of scale. And diseconomy of scale is a natural check on the size of any business, unless there is a state to compensate for it, basically.
That's it. I have a completely unrelated question. This is more of a general economics question, not necessarily a critique towards ANCAP or whatever. But how is land distributed, historically in Western countries? Because I can imagine, if you were a manufacturer and you made clothes, the clothes automatically belong to you. But how do governments historically distribute land? Because land's
Wait a minute. If you're asking how governments do it, they do it by plotting out the land and then selling titles to the plots. Obviously, ANCAPs don't want it to work that way. The way it generally works in ANCAP systems is most likely homestead based. That is to say, there's some natural land. I can't make any claim to it because I can't justify such a claim. But now I go build a parking lot there, or I go build a shopping mall, or a house, or, a farm or something, a golf course. I go develop that land. I mix it with me, in a sense. And now,
Let's
when
make you like many viewers. Let's make you
don't
say that.
Don't use the labor theory of property here. Anyway, continue.
Okay, well, I say I'm a farmer and I shoot my seed all over the land. I can now justify my claim in the event of a dispute. I don't know how versed you are in how ANCAP legal systems work, but I'm under the belief that it's likely today, as has arisen historically in private legal systems, that my demonstration of that I've done something with the land, that I've developed it, would be treated as kind of a gold standard of creating an ownership right where there was none before. I hope it would be like that, but
yeah,
I can't guarantee it would. That's just a prediction and a preference. I think homestead principle is kind of a logical, obvious one. I built a house there. Of course, that's my house. The other ones, I think, they are conceivable and have sometimes been exercised, but they don't seem as obvious to me. In other words, I think homestead principle is kind of a shelling point. Are you familiar with shelling points?
No.
To explain Schelling points, it was a professor, Professor Schelling, his name was. So he had a bunch of students, and he was a college professor. He had his students his students each are paired up into partners, and they're all going on a trip to New York City. And the students don't know who their partner is going to be, and they have no pre-coordination, no communication with each other. The student is then tasked with finding their partner. Once loose in New York City, the student is tasked with finding their partner somewhere in New York City. Now, they have no communication between them. They can't arrange where to meet. So they have to then pick somewhere that would seem like the obvious place to meet up.
Sure.
And so the obvious ones with New York, it was things like the Empire State Building was one of them. The Statue of Liberty was another one. Times Square. The train station where you arrive at New York City. That's another one. These were the what are called the Schelling points for this context. They're kind of the ones that obviously stand out. If you try to go meet your partner, on just the next to some traffic light on Fifth Avenue or something, you're going to lose. You're not going to work. It's not going to work. So Schelling points, broadly speaking, are points that stand out in some way, points that are unique, that have something about them that calls attention to them as an obvious point for settlement on in some way. Another example that David Friedman references is, okay, right now the United States and Mexico share a border that's on the Rio Grande. Now, suppose when that border was formed, the military might of the United States and Mexico are somewhat similar, which at the time was kind of true. Certainly much more true back then than it is now. Now, it's not the case that every time the United States gets another aircraft carrier, the border moves about a mile south. That's not the case. The Schelling point is the existing border.
Okay.
So do you kind of get Schelling points?
Mm-hmm.
There's another one where it involves the game of nuclear war, where it's like the four square grid thing. Country A has nukes, country B doesn't. So what are the outcomes in terms of assigning a numerical point?
Dilemma, it's a prisoner's dilemma, yeah.
Not exactly. In the game of war, so in this scenario, there's one outcome that if the two go to war, country A has nukes, country B doesn't. So it represents -5, say, for country A that has nukes, but -1,000 for country B that doesn't have nukes. Whereas all of the other numbers on the other options, like if they go to war and stuff, or don't go to war, all of the other options are much more mild numbers, -50 for this country, +20 for that country or something. But the -1,000, that's the obvious thing, because we know country B will do anything to avoid that one.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be their priority, is avoid that one at all costs. And this is mutually obvious.
Mm-hmm.
So the Schelling point in this context would either be the surrender of country B or a mutual agreement between them. Or maybe that country A goes to war anyway, but it's clear that country B will not choose war.
Okay.
So it's just a point that has something unique about it.
Okay.
I totally forgot how we got onto Schelling points.
You're talking about property.
Yes, I think that development-based property rights are kind of a Schelling point when it comes to figuring out property norms.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily the only one. You could say another one might be, well, I'm standing in this house, so it belongs to me.
Okay.
Of course, I find that one quite problematic, both in terms of I think it would suck if that was implemented because it would greatly discourage, investment in the construction of property and so on. I'm not going to build a house if once I leave for vacation, somebody else can just move in and now it belongs to them.
Yeah.
Or likewise, most houses are not built to be lived in by the builder. They're built to be sold by the builder to someone who wants to live in it. But I'm not going to do that if somebody can just move in for free.
Yeah.
So I think it would suck, and also I don't think most people will go for it because I think there's a lot more demand to be able to build stuff and then keep owning it than there is money behind the demand to be able to just go occupy someone's house and call it yours now.
Yeah, I see. What are your thoughts on healthcare?
The modern American healthcare system, by the way, other Ancaps, I feel like I'm kind of, what's the word? Just like monologuing a lot. So if y'all want to chime in, feel free. But
abolish
modern
the
American-
state-run healthcare system. It is a detriment to humanity and the people of America. We spend way more than we should.
Just abolish healthcare.
There is a common dichotomy presented where it's viewed that in other countries, the more enlightened countries, like in Europe and so on, like Scandinavian countries, they're sophisticated enough to see the necessity for free healthcare for all, socialized healthcare. Whereas in America, they just have Wild West free market capitalism in healthcare, and their costs are through the roof. I think this is a fundamentally wrong paradigm, though. The United States healthcare system is nothing remotely resembling a free market. The phenomenon I described earlier of artificial oligopoly in markets, whereby the state is used to suppress competition, is absolutely epitomized in the healthcare sector. There is few industries could be said to be more cartelized through state coercion than healthcare.
Okay.
There are literally hundreds of thousands of regulations in healthcare, generally speaking, lobbied for by the largest players in the healthcare sector. You have essentially a duopoly of health insurance. You have state funding across the entire sector. You have an ocean of patents where if you go to the hospital, what your bill is not simply reflecting like the cost of the doctors and stuff. Your bill is reflecting the fact that the medical devices that were used for you and the drugs that are given to you are patented. And not only are they patented, but the ingredients to the drug and the components of the medical device were themselves patented. And furthermore, all of the personnel involved as you go up the supply chain are in artificially short supply based on state accreditation monopolies, artificial requirements to obtain expensive academic credentials that don't even necessarily pertain to your professional field, not directly anyway. So the state makes the cost ridiculous. If you go back in time, if you go to like the 1800s, they didn't have anywhere near the sophistication of healthcare that we have now, of course. But for some things, there are parallels, such as simply the time of a physician for a simple checkup or something. And even adjusting for inflation, the cost is astronomically higher now than it was back then. You had something much closer to a free market back then. And medicine and doctors, at least, the medicine that did exist and the kinds of doctors that did exist, they were far cheaper.
Yeah.
I think
Not
that
to mention,
socialized...
I just want to add, not to mention, even if we assume somehow that someone couldn't afford something, people, in the past in the United States, but this also applied to other countries, like, to a small extent, like, the United Kingdom and Australia. But in the US, a lot of people had access to lodge practice. And lodge practice was a service provided by mutual aid societies. So these were, societies that shared a common value, a common community, within a region, within, cities, whatever. And like a lot of the time, people could, chime in for a very small fee, contribution to the community. and they'd receive healthcare. I think if you actually add the costs, you could get a year's of healthcare for a day's wage back then. I forgot the years now, but generally speaking, it was over time with like a lot of Teddy Roosevelt sort of striked against mutual aid societies, healthcare giants like insurance companies also try to combat mutual aid societies for large practice. And it sort of died out. Well, it still exists to a very small extent, but it mostly died out after the introduction of government programs like state programs and federal programs.
Yeah.
Yeah, the those lot societies really did a lot to make healthcare extremely cheap for your average person. But because of that, other people were angry at that because the doctors at that time, they wanted to be able to charge up the wazoo for healthcare and make a lot of money. So if they had these lodge practice guys coming in and lowering the cost of healthcare, then they're not going to make that much money. So what they did is they put in a bunch of regulation and basically barred them from the profession, so that they now have to pay more. Your average person now has to pay more for doctors. They also limited the amount of doctors that are allowed to gain licensing, and yeah.
So I just looked it up out of curiosity because I had forgotten the figures that were involved in this. I asked ChatGPT, what is the percentage of cost difference adjusting for inflation in going to a physician for a checkup and then in medicine in 1899 versus now. It said it's 3,800% more expensive now.
Okay, can you ask ChatGPT for like what sources are used?
Actually, it already did.
ChatGPT's always right.
Okay, that's cool. That's good.
Okay, it's from. Wait, what? It's a site called in2013dollars.com. I'm opening that up. I don't know what this site is.
Yeah, I think we can continue, but you can just no, I just wanted to know the source. Yeah, in 2013dollars.com.
Now wait a minute. Hold on. After opening this, now I'm not sure because it could just be talking about. It could just be talking about inflation rate. Okay, hold on. Total inflation. Okay, maybe I'm not sure how to read this graph, but it looks like the graph I'm seeing on the website is actually giving me a different answer than ChatGPT. It says the total inflation percentage for healthcare is 28,386, as opposed to Harrell, it's 1,057. This is a bit of a confusing.
I mean, it still gets the point across for like.
Here, I'm gonna just put this in the side chat here. I think the number I gave a minute ago may have actually been a gross understatement. Here, I'm putting this in the side chat though. It's a little confusing to look at least within the context of what ChatGPT just told me. Here, I'm just going to ask ChatGPT for a different source because this is a confusing one. I'm saying use a source that isn't an inflation site. And I'm saying you are adjusting for inflation, not examining inflation. Okay. Says Jesus. And this is it's using Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services as its source, at least for some of its claims. It says that what the fuck? Okay, it's not looking at 1899, it's looking at 1930. Comparing healthcare costs from 1930 because there's much more data on it in 1930. Since 1930, it's claiming that healthcare is roughly 630 times more expensive per person now than it was in 1930. So that's about a 63,000% increase. I'm just gonna put the whole response in the side chat. Now, obviously, this is going to be heavily influenced by the fact that we have much more elaborate, robust healthcare now. It wouldn't be fair to say that's purely government doing this, because they didn't have fucking MRI machines and shit in 1930. It's kind of like housing. Housing and cars are also much more expensive now, like even adjusted for inflation, and government absolutely plays a role in that. But it's also true that housing and cars are much fancier now.
Hello.
Hello,
Yeah.
Matty.
What do you think about
Yo.
ANCAP?
I'm not sure what that means.
Well, you came to the right place.
Or wait, no. Okay, hold on, wait. I think I do. ANCAP. Anarcho-capitalist?
Yes.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Nailed it. 100%.
I don't know. I think some of it makes sense, and I think other parts of it doesn't make sense.
Like,
Which parts would you say make sense?
Sorry, excuse me. Well, I mean, generally speaking, I understand the appeal to capitalism, and free markets and things like that. But I think I start to get lost on some of the anarchist concepts where there's essentially no government. I don't know if that would work too well.
All right. So when you say you don't know if it would work too well, I assume that there is a particular service, or maybe a multitude of them, that the government is currently providing, that you imagine in the absence of a government would not be provided. I'm assuming that's correct?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Now, are any of those services that you might imagine to be in high demand, things that people generally want?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so.
All right. Would you agree with the premise that, generally speaking, per the nature of markets, if people want something, if there's a high demand for something, then this motivates entrepreneurs to sell that thing in order to capture that profit.
Sure, but I don't think this can be done by entrepreneurs, or I don't think the private sector can really. The main thing that I sort of see the government providing in terms of a service that I think is necessary for functioning society is a court system and laws that are enforced. Otherwise, markets would be in a state of flux, right? There would be fraud. I mean, there already is fraud. I mean, even though we have laws, there's still a criminal element that does things like that. People are not forthright in their transactions. And whenever there are disputes, either we handle it between you and I and we just shoot each other or kill each other, or maybe we can mediate and find a peaceful mediation. But if there is truly an impasse, then the only thing that stops things going, even further south is the fact that we have a court system where we can, litigate it.
Sure.
I don't see how there would be a. I don't think there. I don't see how there would be a private. I don't understand how there could be a private court system.
Sure, I'd be happy to illuminate that. I've actually written more than 100 pages just on that exact question in a book. So I think the easiest way to start is just to go through history so that we're not strictly talking theoretical.
Mm-hmm.
There have been stateless societies. There have been large-scale stateless societies. There have been large-scale stateless societies with high populations that persisted for centuries at a time.
Like what?
One that I was going to bring up their court system specifically. The ones where we know the most about how their court systems worked are the Brehon system and the Zir system. And these in...
Sorry, did you say Brecken?
Brehon.
Brehon? Like...
Brehon. It looks like Brehon.
Okay.
In fact, I'd been saying Brehon for years because I was only ever studying this, in writing, reading stuff. And then only recently when I talked to somebody who speaks Gaelic that I learned it was pronounced Brehon. But, so it was in medieval Gaelic society all the way up until conquest by Oliver Cromwell, the British in the 17th century.
Okay.
Much, not all, but much of Ireland operated on anarcho-capitalist principles. Of course, they weren't ideologically anarcho-capitalists. They weren't students of Murray Rothbard or something.
Right.
But they did incidentally not have a state. They didn't have anything that had a monopoly on force over society. Their legal system didn't come from anything recognizable as a government. The way it worked, so individuals were not like citizens of a country or a county where you pay taxes and it goes to local law enforcement and the local law enforcement enforce your rights. That's the model we have now. They didn't have that model. What they did have was people could and did voluntarily enter themselves or their family into it was called a surety contract with somebody else. This is where I go to you and I offer, all right, I will enforce your rights. I'll back you up in enforcing your rights. I will act as guarantor to your debts. And I will enforce the outcomes of judicial disputes that you are a party to. And in turn, you do the same thing for me. And the benefit you get of this contract with me is you also get the backing of my surety contract partners. And if needed, even their partners and so on.
Really quick, what do you mean by a surety contract?
So surety contract is, in this context, in the Gaelic context, it means that both parties are agreeing with each other to essentially kind of like indemnify each other in terms of liability. Plus physical backing, physical protection. If somebody attacks you, I will come help protect you from them. So it's almost like a mutual aid based version of private sector rights enforcement.
That's not. I mean,
I didn't get to the court system yet.
Right, but I mean, like, that's no different than just like schoolyard. Yo, I got your back. Okay, and cool. Yeah, I got yours.
I mean, these were elaborate systems of contracts that expanded out into very large networks of people, of adult people that are in contractual relationships with each other, just as we have
Contracts enforced by who?
contracts enforced by surety contract networks themselves in a couple of fashions. One is direct physical enforcement, and another one, the one that makes it often not
Hold
necessary.
on, no. Who? In a stateless society,
So if I have a
you're saying you and I have a contract. If you violate that
yes,
contract, who do I go to that's going to
yes.
enforce it?
So you and I have a contract. We have contracts to protect each other.
Okay.
You and I are not the only contract partner of each other. We are also party to many other such contracts. Now, in the event that you renege on your contract, suspending the issues of like reputational enforcement and the discipline of constant dealings, those are also very strong for contract enforcement. But even suspending those, after you renege on the contract, I can go to my other surety contract partners and say, hey, this guy reneged on the contract. Here's my evidence, and so on. And now we can come after you for damages, assuming damages are part of the equation. We can come after you for damages. And the fact that you reneged on the contract.
Wait, hold on, wait, time out. Sue me for damages in what court? By whose authority?
That would be with the Brehen. So in their system, maybe I should just outline how it works. Two parties to a dispute, such as two surety contract networks, say after some crime took place, a robbery or something. I robbed you. I have my surety contract partners. You have yours. And I want to come take my stuff back and take a bunch of your stuff as compensation. You, of course, don't want that to happen. Your contract partners are inclined to side with you. Mine are inclined to side with me. Both of them realize that if they were to settle this through violence, it's, on one hand, it's going to be a tremendous cost, both in terms of money, but also quite potentially in terms of lives to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And further, it's going to prevent them from receiving the backing of their other contract partners if they're not doing everything possible to avoid conflict in the first place.
But that's not necessary. That is not true. That is not a necessary truth. In other words, if you and I have a contract and the terms of this contract only involve you and I, we're the only parties. It is absolutely and wholly irrelevant that you're contracting with whatever other Tom, Dick, and Harry that's out there. It has nothing to do. Whatever other contracts you have with any other outside parties has nothing to do with the contract that you have with me. Now, I agree. There might be reputational factors where if one of us reneges, then obviously that's going to hurt your reputation, and maybe there's a bit of self-correction there. But the bottom line is that none of them have any obligation to enforce a contract between you and I when they have absolutely nothing to do with it.
The relation that it has is that we have agreed to enforce each other's contracts. If I don't enforce your contracts, if me and you have an agreement with each other that we're going to enforce each other's contracts, that is to say, if somebody reneges on a contract with you, I'll help enforce that they don't get to do that. When someone reneges on a contract with you...
But hold on, but you're skipping over the fact that this just devolves into people arbitrarily deciding, I'm right. No, I'm right. I'm the party that's in the right. They're the one that wronged me. No, you're the one that wronged me. Who decides it? You don't have a court system.
You do have a court system, though. All of the stateless societies they've all had court systems that work.
And who pays them?
The way it worked in the Brehen,
they do it for free.
The dispute
volunteer. 249 snode spam.
No, it's not free. They charge you. In the same sense that nowadays the modern, American Arbitration Association or the Mediation Center, companies that adjudicate between like insurance companies.
Oh, I see. You pay them a fee for them to. So what it seems like is that a pretext or a predicate before going into a contract is that both parties agree.
249 node spam hugger virus
people
number
do this to- people do this to this day in
298-249 node
contracts. Well,
spam hugger virus.
They will agree to
Arbitration
an arbitration process. Yeah, of like we both agree that
So
like this group will
that's
have
not
the final
required.
arbitration.
Do that again.
You know,
That's doable, but not necessary.
Put that
Even
again,
in
and
the
I'll mute
event
you.
that we had no pre-agreed arbitrator, which in many cases they would, but not all. Even in the event that we have no pre-agreed arbitrator, we still have a mutual interest in resolving the dispute without physical violence. For familiar economic reasons, I can go over those if you want.
I mean, I don't dispute that.
You would arbitrate for violence, bro?
What?
What?
I'm not sure what you mean. What I was going to say earlier is that the way it actually worked in the Brehen system, the way it panned out, was that so me and you have a dispute. Some crime took place. I go to my surety partners. You go to yours. We decide that we're going to bring the matter before Josh the Brehen. That wouldn't have been the name, but Josh the Brehen. Now, the Brehen, anybody who wanted could, in theory, become a Brehen. A Brehen was simply a private arbitrator. They had other functions in society, too. They were also like the artists, poets, and scientists of that society.
Yo, I could be one of them.
It was kind of an intellectual cast of sorts. But it wasn't like
those with high IQ.
It wasn't. It was not like an organization. It wasn't like this group is the Brehen. No, it was just a type of person. In the same sense, we would say, the scholars or the firefighters or something, right? It's not an organization.
Come on, them niggas went and made that.
No, I'm not. Okay, you're.
Don't say that word.
Like
don't
interjecting with.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway.
Left.
Anybody who wanted could, in theory, become a Brehen, but in practice, it was generally they were raised. Their father was a Brehen, and they were raised in the tradition of the Brehen law, studying it from childhood.
Yeah, what did you think of the clip? It was funny. I got a lot of shit for it.
That everybody was expected to follow.
It was hilarious.
Yes, there was slight variance between different courts. They didn't have a legislative body, and there wasn't a monopoly. Anyone who wanted could be a Brehen. So you had degrees.
That TikTok has gotten me a lot of views, so I'm happy. Also, some pretty cool people made some TikTok edits of me, which you guys should definitely go give a like. It's in my story.
I actually concede that there are certain contexts that I think that these systems can work. However, I can't help but notice that the times and the context where it seems to work. I mean, we're talking about Ireland essentially, and this was a place where we're talking about an extremely homogeneous culture. They're homogeneous racially, religiously, culturally. So there's already
you can have that. You can have that in
This is the perfect example of people not actually thinking through,
right? Like a very rigorous,
what they actually believe in.
Framework by.
I mean, it follows. I mean, if you think about it, like if God is all-knowing, that would have to mean that he would have to know what it feels like, right? It would be impossible for him not to.
Happen, but in a place like the United States. I would say it's wholly impossible under the
but he clearly hasn't connected those dots.
The United States.
Let's examine the same principles being done in societies that were not homogenous, where they were diverse, of which I know two clear examples and one arguable. The two clear ones are Zomia and not all of, but much of the American Old West. So the Old West sounds puzzling at a glance because the media we're accustomed to, the way things work in the Old West, it looks like you've got the town sheriff and his deputies and the town hall and, kind of Clint Eastwood movie vibes or John Wayne. Now, there absolutely
means that there's a rule of law in the Old West. Counties and cities were run by legislative bodies
logic to get people out of positions.
In some places, yes. In some places, no.
Yeah,
If you're
got a lot
talking
of
about San Francisco,
I mean, there was
then
some
yes.
Christians. There was
If you're
some
talking
Christians
about
that
a
did
mining
admit it.
encampment in Colorado, then no. If you're talking about a cattle ranching community
To which
in
they have gotten themselves in
Wyoming,
without logic.
then no, or Montana. There was a lot of towns and communities of different kinds where they didn't have the town sheriff and they didn't have a legislative body, especially up until the late 19th century. And within those communities, they had, on one hand, they did have diversity. In the Old West, you did not have clear homogeneity. I can never say that fucking word.
I would dispute that. I would strongly dispute that.
You had coexistence. Look, where the old school narrative is that all the settlers were at war with all the Native Americans, and of course there was wars that
But
happened.
it
there was
doesn't
absolutely
necessarily
conflict,
apply to Christians.
but it wasn't the
It
rule.
applies to all
There was very
Abrahamic
often
religions.
peaceful cohabitation between settlers and Native Americans. There was trade between them and so on. So you have Native Americans, you have different kinds of white settlers, which were not as alike back then as they would be now. That is to say, Germanic people, Germans that had come to America and gone to the Old West, would have been very different from Irishmen who did so, which would have been very different from Englishmen who did so. Differences between white people were much more pronounced back then.
So you had a human warrior,
Mormons,
and now
likewise.
you got a troll.
Mexicans were highly...
I love the troll. I think trolls are cool.
But you hold on. You're also, dude. You're
The troll is the best race, I think.
A place and a moment in time that is known for its violence.
I mean, they are, but it's still a
that
warrior.
to me would suggest that.
Yeah.
LOL.
There's a book about that.
Oh no, but it's on a different server.
anarcho-capitalism
It's on a different
working.
server.
There was extreme violence during
Yeah.
this time, and it was
So,
prevalent
this-
all the time.
Turtle Well has two servers. There's
So there's a book
Ambershire
about
and there's
that called The Not So Wild
another
Wild
one.
West.
It's
Part of the
Ambershire.
thesis being that
So my
yes,
troll
The
is
Not So Wild Wild West
warrior
by
on
Terry
that one.
Anderson.
You know what I mean?
Arguing among other things that a
My
lot of
human
that
warrior
is
is on the
Hollywood.
other one.
It's not that there
the
wasn't
other Northern
violence in the
R.
Old West, or even that it was extremely peaceful, relatively speaking. Although it is, if you compare it to even some modern American inner
I
cities
wish
and
the
stuff.
new realm was for HC.
But the vast majority of the violence in the
I'm
Old
pretty sure
West
anyone could do
was
hardcore.
not intra-societal. It was not like settlers killing
That's
each other.
something
for the
I'm
most
pretty
part.
sure you choose in the
It
beginning.
was wars between
when you make your
settlers and
character.
Native Americans that had already taken place in the East in prior centuries.
Are you
The same
from the
violence.
West?
I was born in Seattle. I'm raised in Baltimore, and I live in Florida now.
So, yeah,
I've
my
spent time-
understanding. I don't know who the author is that you mentioned. I've never heard of him, but I'm a bit of a local historian, at least from
Yeah,
the.
but that's the point.
I grew up
Now the community
in
is split
Northern
on the two
California
servers.
in the Gold Rush territory, 49er territories, right? And
Sure.
it was extremely violent here. And there
They
are
could have
direct
just
sources
disabled
from
HC on
the
Ambershire.
counties back in the Old West in the
I noticed that
1800s, and we still have
when
all
when
those
the
records.
when the server
and,
first
to,
came
like,
out,
to
I
give you
thought
a
it was
direct
really
quote
cool because there was
from
like a lot of people
a
on it.
county
But now it's
historical
kind of died down, and both
records from,
servers
like, the
are
1800s. They literally
equal.
said that there were
Wow is
robber
nice.
barons under
You, on
every
the other
tree,
hand,
and it was a war
maybe a
zone
5.
during the 49er
Damn,
Gold
bro,
Rush.
not very
An
nice.
absolute war zone. I mean, dude, there was a family
You're just a hater.
that sold a mining claim to these like Chinese dudes, and then the Chinese dudes, after the deal was already done, like a day or two later, came back and wanted to renege on the deal, and the family was like, "No, a deal's a deal. You bought the claim; it's yours."
So I want to
We're
show
not
you
giving
guys
you the
something.
money
I got
back.
a new phone charger.
So these like two
That is
Chinese
a-
Are
dudes like
equal, yes.
I don't know if you
slaughtered
guys
But it's
can see
her
it.
harder
husband
to
and
find
wife.
stuff in HC for both
And
realms.
It
No, I
caused
get what you're
such
saying.
a
I'm saying like
uproar in the community.
I
that
was
they
gonna say
literally,
something
like,
else
drove
after I
out
said that.
HC
all of
just
the
remained on
Chinese,
Nordain
dude,
R.
like violently.
What I
mean,
was gonna say was
dude, it
that
was a
now they're both
very
equal, so I
violent
feel
time
like they might
period,
as well
so
just put them together.
I would just
Because-
challenge your source that I don't think your source knows.
You know
what
what
they're
I mean?
talking
They might as
about.
well just
Anyone
put
who's
it
gonna
together.
Tell me the Old
No, wait.
West was
So they
like
both have like 6,000.
relatively
Because right
peaceful.
now both of them
No.
have like 3,000.
I disagree with that.
So if they put them together, that'll be like
The
6,000 people.
location that you
But
referenced.
I just got a new phone charger here, right? Look, so
and
it's
you
like
may know this, you may not know this if you're a
So
local
if this is an
historian.
iPhone, and
seems
then I go
likely.
like this,
The plan
Was
was
this
to merge
an
them if one or the other
anarcho-capitalist
is more
area?
popular.
and it turns into a Samsung phone
I mean,
charger.
this is an area that obviously had a county, so there was like local law enforcement, right? There was a sheriff's department back
So
in
it's
these
double.
days.
It's both a Samsung and an
I will say
iPhone.
having a county as drawn on a
10
map by
voices.
political people
Amazing, haha.
doesn't actually necessarily mean that you functionally have a state there. But you'll know more about it than me.
Should I deafen when I speak, or is that annoying?
There was a sheriff's department with personnel, and that was the primary means by which.
I would have to say there was a state because there was tax collectors, there was deputies, there was during this area in the gold rush. I mean, there was so much money in this area. This is the Santa Fe ring, right? This is San Francisco. This is
got that super fast
all
charge
the way from San Francisco all the way up to like the Placers.
I think
and
it's
the
better
the
if
Sierra
you
Nevada
deafen,
foothills,
because it's more clearly
right? So
understood.
like this is a shitload of money. So there's like legit government. I would have to say there's a state.
Certainly in San Francisco. San Francisco,
even out in Placer County. I mean,
notoriously.
people are having to pay taxes, and those taxes are paying for the sheriff and deputies and tax assessors and all that stuff.
Sure. And
hit the pen.
what was I gonna say? By the way,
He's telling me to hit the pen, then hop on the UC. Don't go back to org. LMFAO. Huh? I'm not sure what he's telling me. Hit the pen, then hop on the UC. Don't go to org.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're gonna get more you're gonna get more remote places where maybe there's not,
LOL.
a form of taxation, yet there's still, there's
So
still
the way
going to
it
be
did
people
work-
adhering to certain common principles of
I was gonna
morality
raise-
and dealing with each other.
The reason I brought it up was to illustrate how the legal system functioned in those communities.
Well,
So
the group
they did
broke
have
up.
law; it just wasn't a product of the state. They had private law. The way private law worked, broadly speaking, is the task of rights enforcement was the job of private security companies and range detectives, detective agencies as well. Most famously, Pinkerton, although that was one that it came from the east and went out west. But that was one that was certainly a big one. But there were also lots of little ones as well.
But the Pinkertons, call them what you will. They're essentially hired guns. They're private security.
Yes, they are. Yes, exactly. So you had private hired guns of various kinds. Range detectives were a big popular one. You had private hired guns whose
honestly, I don't even know, bro. It was just a big ass waste of time because the people just left the group and now I'm by myself again. So now I just gotta go and fly back to where I was before. What a waste of time.
He wants battle from that guy, right? They've each got their own respective security agencies, at least potentially. The two agencies realize that it's not profitable for them to fight it out, and generally speaking, they won't. They bring the matter before, in the Old West context, they bring the matter before the Cattlemen's Association, or they bring it before a land club or something, depending on what kind of dispute it is. They had private associations that sold the service of arbitration for different kinds of disputes.
Yeah, I did.
Context. So somewhat similar to what emerged in the Brehen system and what emerged in the Zir system and the Zomian system and the Kospian system and so on. And that was one that was more diverse.
Just take the other two undercity
at least compared
XD.
to medieval Ireland or something. It was much more diverse.
I mean, I can't now. I'm not in a group anymore. They all left.
Examples where this completely went awry as well. Like, you ever hear of the Lincoln County
just
War?
Departed.
I am thinking of what's his name? Billy the Kid?
Billy the Kid, there you go. It's a very real story.
I have a weird connection to Billy the Kid, but go on.
Do you really? What's your connection?
It's so okay. If this was years ago that I realized this, so I may be butchering it, but are you familiar with the ship called the SS Pacific?
No, not off the top of my head.
If you're a California historian, this will definitely interest you. So there was a ship largely full of gold miners around the time of the gold rush that was going from Alaska to San Francisco. And somewhere off the coast, it sank. And something like $1 billion worth of gold is believed to have been on it.
Wait, so are you saying that
the other Zeppelin at Grongle takes you to the Undercity?
Wait, so there's 2 Zeppelins? So which Zeppelin am I taking now? Fuck, I think I fucked this all up.
Yes.
So where am I going? I'm going back to Orgrimmar now.
You did.
Okay. Okay, so basically that place takes me there and another place.
You could have just taken the other to UCXD.
I could have, but fuck. I mean, I'm not going to go now because I'm not doing I'm not doing the dungeon anymore. So,
in a site that was believed to potentially have the SS Pacific there.
Okay.
And
now you're riding 3 Zeppelin rides instead of just 2 XD.
From a marine archaeologist in order to get a federal claim to that salvage. And then, based on that federal claim,
I'm not going to Undercity.
Millions more in investor money.
I'm not going to Undercity anymore.
Actually, do the salvage.
Yeah.
This guy named Jeff Hummel, big time shyster and a fucking lunatic. He is. Anyway, there was going to be a show about this called Pacific Gold and all kinds of shit. There still may be, but it'll be a different kind of show now. So it turns out that the ship hasn't been found. Me and my dad, for a long time, were thinking we're about to be diving on the fucking on the SS Pacific, and it was an interesting story around the SS Pacific. And now I'm scrambling to remember what the connection between the SS Pacific and Billy the Kid. You know what? I'm just going to ask ChatGPT. What was the connection between the SS Pacific and Billy the Kid?
Oh, wait, I gotta go to the Undercity now that I think about it.
Was Billy the Kid's wife?
So, you know what? Let's go.
Was on it or something? I don't fucking remember. Okay, ChatGPT doesn't know. I'll have to ask my dad. And, you know, he wouldn't be able.
So I'm guessing this one goes to...
he would be awake.
All the stops. You can always ask them which it goes to.
Remind me the connection between the SS Pacific
You're a good man.
And Billy the Kid.
Despite what they say about you.
He will be thrilled to receive this question.
But anyway, so the Lincoln County War is precisely the conditions that you're speaking of, right? Like the Lincoln County War happened in technically the state of New Mexico, but it was completely unincorporated. There was no meaningful central authority, right? There was no reliable court system. There was no real effective governorship whatsoever. No consistent federal presence of federal troops. And what happened was they operated under this private system of arbitration. You had these cattle ranching cartels, essentially, right, that would pop up, and they would hire arbitrators, they would hire private enforcers, they would hire like their own Pinkertons, their own hired hands. They would have attorneys, and the attorneys would kind of deal with other, cattle cartel operations, and that's literally what sparked the Lincoln County War. Was one cattle cartel faction versus another, and it was.
If only I had a wife. That's why I'm here playing World of Warcraft.
It wasn't a power vacuum. You had state-imposed barriers to entry that Tunstall and McSween had created a competing firm. The monopolists used government-backed enforcers to attack them.
Well, no,
There was an
not
episode
necessarily.
with a nuclear strike imminent on Los Angeles.
So, like the Murphy Dolan House, true that they had. It is true that they had someone that was functioning
Wipe
as
it
a
off the
sheriff
map.
that had their back. But aside from that, I mean, they controlled. Like they hired their own lawmen, right? Like they hired their own. Like each side. So you have Murphy, and then you have Tunstall, which
This
is like where Billy
entire
the
city
Kid was
must
at,
be
right?
purged.
The regulators. Each side had their own hired guns, and they were all private. I mean, certainly the sheriff got involved. What was his face?
Not just the sheriff himself.
Pat Garrett.
Not just the sheriff himself, though. It's his deputies. This is tax funding for the conflict.
Right, I understand, but
the rulings which led.
Hey, what's your take
the
on
rulings
the
which led to the conflict? Those were all.
I think the lawsuit is bullshit. I think that Turtle Wow is violating the rights of the people who run Turtle Wow by
it clearly
doing
hasn't
this.
deterred you from playing TWOW.
I do not care about it. I'm going to play Turtle Wow until it gets shut down. Turtle Wow is the only version of World of Warcraft that I will play. I will not play any other version. I don't care about any other version. I only care about Turtle WoW because it is the best version of WoW. And I think that Blizzard needs to shut the fuck up and let Turtle WoW continue what they're doing. As an anarchist, I do not support the idea of intellectual...
Well said, brother.
I do not support the idea of intellectual property rights. I think they are a violation of property rights to claim ownership over an idea. So therefore, Blizzard stopping the people who are running Turtle WoW from doing what they do is a rights violation.
Quote unquote diversity now that it's like we need a
TWOW will
monarchy
stay.
at this
Blizz is
point if we
FCKD
wanna
up anyway.
survive.
It's not even
I mean,
intellectual
but why
property
even like
rights
under
because
limited
whoever made
law you would
Classic
have,
isn't
you
at
know,
Blizzard
freedom of
anymore.
association, or rather free.
I mean, they own the IP rights to Blizzard.
Except Metzen, who doesn't care.
But legally under the law, but I don't think they have. Despite that, I don't think they have the right to stop anyone from copying their work. Copying is not theft. They've done nothing wrong.
And freedom to associate includes freedom to discriminate. Freedom of association means you don't have to associate with anyone in
but
particular.
the laws are not
So,
infallible.
for example, let's say
I understand that. I understand that. But what I
They
mean
have a
is
big wave
that
from Russia.
is that I think that we have such a problem with radical diversity in this country that we
Laws
are
need an
shooting
expiration
ourselves in the
date.
foot if we are gonna allow
We need to abolish all patent laws and intellectual property rights laws.
actions that are antithetical to what everyone else is trying to do. A la, like we have our own Bolshevik party, we have communists here, like we have people that can't even agree on what gender is, and the idea that we're just going to give them this fucking freedom on a silver platter, that it's like, yeah, go ahead and undermine that which is good and that which is moral and that which makes sense. We're going to let you undermine it, every step. I think that's a fool's errand, absolute fool's errand.
I think the creation of power structures usually, or at least the advocacy, support of power structures of, centralized monopolies of force is usually supported based on the premise that the speaker is going to have their own preferences and views and ideologies upheld by that power structure.
I'm guessing you're not
I
a
think that's
believer
almost
yourself.
never the case. And certainly in a complex democracy.
I'm an anarchist, so I don't believe in intellectual property laws. I only believe in laws that uphold the non-aggression principle, which would be any sort of theft or harm to another person's body or their property.
At least not in a sense Americans usually are, religiously.
No, I'm an anarchist. I don't believe in the state. I think the state is a criminal organization.
That's who will wield it.
Yeah, I disagree. I think that as many places that you think you can look and say, oh,
What about the concept of
here's
deities?
a perfectly functioning, or not perfect.
I'm not a religious man, so I mean, just look at my last TikTok and you'll see that.
Better that were monarchies.
Are they man-made?
That were literally had emperors and kings.
I'd say so. I don't really know if there is a god. I can only assume that there is not one based on the fact that there's no evidence to display that they exist, or no demonstrable, nothing demonstrable.
Countries you'll ever
Men
go to.
created
You
gods
could
in their
literally
own
park your
image.
car on the street, leave the keys in the ignition, go into work for 8 hours, come outside, and your car's still going to be there untouched. I
should point out, I actually prefer monarchy to democracy between the two. I think you have a much better incentive. There's a book about that I would recommend.
Me too.
You would love this, I bet. It's called Democracy, the God That Failed.
That's a classic
I am certain
book.
this book
That's
will
a great
resonate
book.
with you. It's called Democracy, the God That
is
Failed
a failure.
by Hans Hermann Hoppe.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, because like we're Democracy is a movie that we're like seeing on repeat, and the fascist movements learned the hard way before us, right? Like fascism arose as a reaction to the absolute.
So far there have been about 3,000 gods. Most don't believe in 2999.
Because
you
of
just
democracy.
go one further.
You open your borders, you open your society.
I created my own religion called praxeology, praxianism.
Whatever, everyone gets an equal say, and then the next thing you know, the whole nation states are failing, right? And degeneracy is taking over, and then you have these fascist, reactionary movements to try to, woe back the reins a little bit. By then it's usually far too late. And what they learned, though, if you read some of these fascists, right, the quote unquote fascists, like Cornlu, Cadranu, Cornlu.
Let me guess.
Yeah,
no
when you read
taxes
him,
and you eat
dude,
as much
like,
pizza as you desire.
you read these other guys. They basically say that like democracy will always devolve, into
and the
just
afterlife
utter
is
chaos.
floaty cakes.
Always.
I hope so.
And I agree with them on that point.
'Cause
I
I
don't
hate
agree with
taxes.
what the solution is, of course. But
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know that I do either. I'm just saying I can at least understand the reaction. I get why it happens, because you have these freaking degenerate scumbags running all over the place, killing everyone, slaughtering everyone. You don't really have another choice other than to take up arms and fight. At that point,
I'm not saying that any of that is not true.
No. Taxation is theft. It's the forceful extraction of wealth from the innocent. It doesn't matter what it's going to pay for. It's theft.
No police, no ambulance, no hospitals.
Well, there would be... I believe in all those things. I just think they should be privatized. If you want those things, you should pay for those things for yourself, or you can pay for some sort of subscription service that would provide it as some sort of, like insurance.
So everyone has their own militia?
No. Well, basically, you could pay to an insurance company that would insure your property from torts or rights violations, and they would have their own military, and then you could choose which insurance company you want, because they would compete with each other. It would be multiple.
So multiple police forces and ambulance.
Yeah, competing with each other.
Spring, at least not
they
directly.
gotta stay busy to bank up as much money through selling, essentially selling access for in exchange for money.
And since the French Revolution, and especially since World War One, as we've seen the world shift from traditional monarchy.
Huh? So they put the fire out if you call them. Yeah, they could probably or you could just subscribe to some sort of private fire department, or you could have it tacked onto your homeowner's insurance too, or something like that. There's plenty of ways to privatize that. In fact, there are already private fire departments. Even in states.
I know corruption is a problem, but you're still paying for these currently with taxes.
Well, the issue is that it's not consensual. If the state forces me to pay for things I don't want. For instance, I don't want the state.
Do you believe it'll be cheaper in some?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because the state forces you to pay for things that you don't want. Like bombing people in foreign countries. Whereas private companies you only pay for the protection that you need. So yeah, it would most certainly be cheaper. Also, there would be competition.
70% of firefighters are volunteers.
Yeah, that is true. A lot of them are volunteers.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. I don't support wars.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, I'm sure you didn't ask for, whatever war is going on, or all our money going to, say, like, Israel or something like that. It's a bunch of bullshit. Like, I don't support that, right? I'm sure you don't support that. Who wants that? Some bullshit.
Bro, my country is spending a fortune to support schools abroad while ours rotting at home.
Why the hell should our money go to any of that shit? Bun Kisser is live on Grindr.
Right.
But I think that, relatively speaking, if I have to choose between monarchy and democracy, it's not even close. I'm going monarchy.
Yeah, I would be in the same boat. And I would probably take monarchy over anarcho-capitalism as well.
I think that's true up until the day you actually see anarcho-capitalism.
Rise up and remove
we have very different
lies.
predictions about how it's likely to go.
We need to throw them in the trash. That's where they belong.
And by extension, prosperity that is plausible for a given society will be met under
anarcho-capitalism is
fair conditions.
Yeah, but in my opinion, all anarcho-capitalism lays off fair this, lays off fair that. That's an ideal. It's an idealist pipe dream, to put it mildly. Because look,
to say that it does what? I didn't hear the part of it.
It's an idealist pipe dream.
No, before that, you said anarcho-capitalism, something this and something that. I didn't hear what it.
Lays off fair this, lays off fair that, is what I said.
Well, wait a minute. It is demonstrable that the freer the markets, the more prosperous the people. There's a clear relationship between ranking on economic freedom indexes and prosperity of a society.
Look, political power comes out of the barrel of a gun. I think that's the one thing that Mao said that is absolutely 100% true. And that is true whether you have a stateless society, whether you have an anarcho-capitalist society. It does not matter. The bottom line is that at the very base, at our base as human beings, we are incredibly tribalistic. We're always going to try to create our own team. We're going to get on the team that we support, and we're gonna support that team in opposition to like anyone else, right? Like it's just the way it is, and like everything can go good, sure, maybe for a little bit in your little anarcho-capitalist world until someone with bigger guns come along and says, we don't really give a shit. We don't care about we don't care about your arbitrators. We don't care about what you say. We're going to take your stuff. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And I think that we need to have, if we're going to have serious functioning societies in modern days, the only way to do it is through monarchy, period.
But then the monarch says, we're going to take your stuff.
Again, dude, like it's a pipe dream. You are not going to find Ayn Rand's, what's the name of the fucking...
Galt's Gulch. Galt's Gulch.
Yeah, dude, you're not going to find that, dude. That doesn't exist anywhere. It's not real because it's a pipe dream, dude. Like it's never
We're going to make it, bro. We're going to make it.
Wait a minute.
No, you're not, dude. Like, dude, and you know what's funny? And you know what's funny, dude? I was way into all this stuff when I was younger. But as I got older, I realized. Oh my
god, are you gonna Big Brother us right now?
No. I'm not trying to Big Brother anyone. I'm just saying. I just think it's really idealistic. Extremely idealistic. I'm not trying to Big Brother you. I'm just saying I think it's
perhaps sure, but what I think is more idealistic is the premise of a benevolent government. The idea that a monopoly on force that has special legal privilege to do things to people that would be illegal for anyone else to do is going to act centrally in the interests of the people at large.
That's not true. The king might have monopolies on certain things, but certainly not on force. Read the Polycraticus, right?
Monopoly on force is a misleading term. Monopoly on force doesn't mean you're the only one in society that has the capacity to wield force. Monopoly on force means that you're the one in society that has overwhelming force, such that no one else can stand up to you. This is the defining characteristic of a government.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's not entirely true either, because look at what happened on the battlefield at Runnymede, right? Look at what happened when the nobles got together and they produced the Magna Carta, right? You should write this down. Polycraticus, you should read it. The Polycraticus, it's a really good book.
Polycraticus,
and it has a lot of sort of anarcho-capitalist sort of principles, but it's based on this concept of interposition. There's actually a pastor somewhere who talks a lot about this. I forget what his name is, but talks about how lower authorities are always supposed to put the higher authority in check if the higher authority starts to get all, tyrannical, essentially. And that's what you had at Runnymede. That's what the Magna Carta is.
Would this logic extend to the premise that, say, if the United States federal government does something tyrannical, as they constantly do, then the state governments are supposed to intervene?
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I am going to predict that, and I have been predicting that, at some point, dude, like shit is getting so crazy in this country that there's already been secessionist movements all over the country. Like there's one in California called, oh God, what the fuck is it called? State of Jefferson. No, it's called the State of Jefferson, where this was actually, they were trying to do this back before World War II, because California is such a huge state that the people in the North are not treated fairly, and the people in the North of the state are basically having to live according to the rules of a bunch of people that are freaking hundreds of miles away down in Southern California, and it's just different. It's different up in the North. The rest is very mountainous.
There's similar sentiments are found in the state of Washington, where on the western half of Washington, or not really half, the western quarter of it or something, you've got the Seattle people, and the Tacoma people and so on. And
and I mean, overall, dude, people are just losing faith in the institution, and rightly so, because our institutions cannot be trusted anymore. Period. Federal government cannot be trusted anymore. Even local governments. Like, dude, look at Jay Jones. Jay Jones is the acting district attorney in West Virginia, and this is a fucking guy who literally said he thinks that conservative children are Hitler, and that he wants to see conservative children dead. He'd be happy if they died.
Wait, this is a guy in West Virginia?
Yeah, dude, he's a fucking liberal Democrat.
Not New York City, not California or Hawaii or New Jersey.
This is in like Virginia or West Virginia, something like that.
What the
And this
fuck?
guy, while he was running his campaign, got exposed. All of his text messages got leaked, where he was literally saying shit like that he hopes they die, and he fucking hates conservatives and thinks conservative kids are fucking Nazis. And this is the dude who's being trusted to like bring prosecutions against people. Like, dude, fuck that. Like, at some point, dude, the adults in the room need to start talking about a divorce, whether that's a national divorce, whether it's balkanization. It needs to happen, because I can tell you nothing good is going to come from this. Violence is on the horizon, my friend, and it's inescapable. It's going to get violent. I can promise you that.
I think Monero is a possible alternative.
What's Monero?
We all need to use Monero.
You've probably heard of Bitcoin.
I've heard of Bitcoin,
So-
yeah.
Monero, it's kind of like Bitcoin, except with Bitcoin, all of your transactions are recorded on a public blockchain that anybody can view. So if you send me Bitcoin, anyone can go see that your wallet sent this much Bitcoin to my wallet. Monero
my
obfuscates that
God.
whole process,
Interesting.
such that you cannot look at the blockchain. Your address is represented on the blockchain by a one-time spoofed address, it's a proxy,
Yep.
and it's called a stealth address. And
And
then that stealth,
Monero is a coin that's trading right now on like
oh yeah, it's been trading for like 10 years or something now,
oh wow.
maybe less,
Is
maybe
it
a little
on,
more.
Is it on, what's the main app that everyone uses?
Coinbase,
Crypto-
no.
Coinbase. It's not on Coinbase.
No, none of the big ones that are in bed with the state are tolerant of Monero. But
So you have
there's,
you have to go to a DEX or something like that.
it doesn't have to be a DEX. You can go, you can get it on Edge, you get it on Pancake Swap, MoonPay and shit. You can get it on Bisq. There's a lot of platforms that deal in Monero. Monero is probably one of the top 10 coins.
Interesting. I've never heard of
It's
this
a big
before.
one. Yeah, I first heard about it when I was I can say this because of statute of limitations. 10 years ago, I was a darknet dealer.
Interesting.
Based and red pilled.
I sold ketamine mainly.
Based.
Ketamine and other drugs. What?
So funny. I was just laughing. I said that's
No,
so
I
funny.
said based.
You ever see the show How to Sell Drugs Online Fast?
I've heard of it.
Well, I did that.
That's
I mean,
funny.
they get a lot sillier with it in the show, but I did a version of it, basically. In the show, they go on the ClearNet. I never went on the ClearNet. I think that's crazy. But
Right.
I did have similar shit arise, though. I had a business partner that was trying to fucking kill me. He tried to kill me twice. One of those times
What a
he technically
dirtbag.
succeeded.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
What an asshole.
Monero, I think, poses some very interesting possibilities. The relevant portion is that it's money that's totally untraceable. Now,
I'm all in.
I realize-
I'm all in favor. Absolutely, all in favor of stuff like that.
Now, but imagine the implications. I realize this could be a long shot, but imagine if hypothetically the entire economy shifted from dollars to Monero. What would that do? I think that the public good problem would, at least from the perspective of an ANCAP, would work in our favor, very much so. The average person is not an ANCAP. The average person supports government. However, the average person who supports government doesn't want to pay for it. They want some other sucker to pay for it.
But really quick though. So I think there's a big distinction though, because certainly there's, like I said, there's certain things I agree with that would be more consistent with an ANCAP position. But like for example, having less government or limited government in my mind is still not ANCAP. ANCAP is like literally
No, it's-
no government.
It's not. You're correct. ANCAP is no government, and
Right.
having smaller government is not ANCAP. And there's a huge difference between them. It's they're not
Right.
even similar. They're
Right.
they're very different, distinctly different things.
But I
because it's
agree
just
with you. I
fundamentally
agree
different.
with you. I agree with you in the sense that if taxation was completely voluntary, then people would vote with their dollars on what they actually wanted and what they didn't want. And I think you would see probably 90 to 95% of all government, federal, state, local, disappear. People don't want it.
I
They
think
wouldn't
it's
pay for it.
I think it's 100. The reason I think it's 100% is because I think that funding a monopoly on force, and remember how I defined that term a minute ago, it doesn't mean you're the only one with any guns. It means that you overpower everyone else such that they would have to organize a revolution to stop you. Funding a monopoly on force, being consistently the most powerful organization in society in terms of capacity for force, is not just expensive, it requires a certain proportion of the society's overall wealth. And that proportion raises as the wealth of the society raises. So I'm imagining that this is wholly conjectural and speculative. I don't think the average statist is going to contribute a third of their income or a tenth of their income or even 1% of their income necessarily to the government if there's no enforcement that says they have to, or else something bad happens to them. Think about it like this. Everybody supports the Make-A-Wish Foundation's mission. We like government is highly contentious. We all have different ideas about what the government should do, and or whether it should even exist in some of our cases. But nobody's bothered by Make-A-Wish Foundation. You know, they make little kids' dreams come true, kids who are terminally ill. Everyone agrees that that's a great thing. And yet the vast majority of us don't pay anything to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So that's something that we all agree is good. And most of us don't pay anything to it. Or if we do, it's not a percentage of our money. It's a donation here and there.
Right.
Now, with government, you've got an organization that everybody's constantly up in arms about, that is known to do things like, bombing civilian populations and imprisoning peaceful people, and all kind of interventions in the economy that favor the elites over the over small businesses and stuff. I mean, all kinds of foul shit that people across the aisle have a problem with. They have different problems with it. A Republican has different gripes with government than a Democrat does, but they do equally have their gripes with government. So it's very easy for an individual to rationalize, even who supports the idea of government in the abstract, to rationalize not paying their money to this particular
they kicked me out of the party.
Instance of government. And I think the
whatever.
likely outcome of that, if you don't have ability to enforce taxes, if you can't see people's money and take it,
LOL.
is they don't conjure sufficient funding to to maintain a monopoly on force.
No,
Therefore,
I already told you 90 to 95% of government would just disappear overnight. It would be gone. It would be gone. But again, this is the place, dude, where reality is just what it is. And what's the name of the place again? Gulch? Gulch?
Gulch. I have not actually read Ayn Rand, but I know what you're referencing.
You've never read Ayn Rand in your...
I watched the movie.
I like the movie. The book is good, but again, dude,
I have an aversion.
There's no way like that's going to happen in reality, and I don't see how I don't see how true ANCAP is going to maintain not a state, but
it's going to work. Trust me, bro.
A place that is going to maintain relevancy on a global scale.
It's going to work. It's going to work. Trust me, bro.
It depends what you mean by relevancy. So when we look at a history book
what I mean by relevancy is where you can't call it a state, but where like an area basically that's going to be represented, that's going to be free from potential takeovers from other nation states that are like worldwide global powers.
Yeah. So just sustain itself. So
it can't.
I have several chapters of my book devoted to arguing for the premise that a
You wrote a
stateless
book?
society. I'm not finished with it, but I've written a lot of it.
Okay.
And I've got several chapters devoted to arguing the premise that stateless societies are in a military advantage over governed societies. That is, it's harder to conquer a stateless society than to conquer a society with a government, all else being equal.
Dude,
And
how can you say such a thing?
so there's several answers to this. There's economics.
I could send you the audiobook.
There's game theory based answers. Yeah, he's got an audiobook of like a portion of the book that's like an early rough draft. I'm nowhere near done, even the part that he has as an audiobook, which does cover the relevant stuff and would be sufficient to more comprehensively illustrate my arguments. It's far from finished, but anyway, there are economic arguments, game theory arguments, and empirical arguments in terms of historical arguments. I think what's usually the most compelling to people is historical, or I should say empiricism. Stateless societies, when they exist at a large scale, have tended to last for far longer than governments do, and they have tended to be far more resilient against foreign conquest. So the best example of that is Zomia. Zomia is kind of a unique case because statelessness has usually emerged by accident, especially when it's at a large scale. It has generally emerged by some kind of, it's a cartographical error or people settling an area that wasn't previously settled and they don't happen to create a government in this spot or something. But in the case of Zomia, they were anarchists. They didn't have that word, but that's what they were. I'm guessing you're not familiar with Zomia. It's a lesser known chapter of history. You'd say they don't have historical.
Isn't Zomia like Asia, part of Asia? Like
Yeah.
like Burma?
Okay, so you do know it. Yeah, so it's the highlands of Southeast Asia. It's basically a span of highlands and mountain ranges that goes across 5 countries. It's not the whole countries of those countries, but it's their highlands, which are connected.
Right.
It's part of China, part of Myanmar, part of Thailand, part of Vietnam, and part of Laos, and some would say part of India, kind of depending what counts. It's not a country with a national government and a clear border or something. So how the map is drawn there's some variance in it. But this is a society that it was created by people who they had been tribes of people that lived within the city-states of the lowland governments in Southeast Asia that found themselves targeted and they left for the purpose of escaping government. And that began about a little over 2,000 years ago. And more groups of people like the Karen and the Hmong and the Lahu people continued to, over time, flee their governments and run to the hills, essentially. Yeah. And they formed societies in the hills.
But that's not a good example though, because what major global power has tried to take that place over and then failed?
So China, the government of Vietnam, the government of Burma, the French colonial government, and the government, did I already say Thailand? I don't know if I said Thailand or not. So they were subject to constant attempts at conquest, and they withstood attempts at conquest for longer than almost any other society ever has. Not forever, by the way. Not forever.
But that's not a feature of their statelessness, dude. It has to do with military tactics, and
that's part of it.
Why am I blanking on the name? Chinese dude, Sun Tzu, right? Dude, the geography, the weather, all of it plays a role in whether or not.
Absolutely, you're right, and that was part of their tactics.
This is asymmetrical warfare. It has nothing to do with whether you're a stateless society or not.
You're absolutely correct. Well, it's both. It has to do with the nature of asymmetric warfare and the nature of, say, being up in the mountains, especially in those times, versus being in the lowlands. They're utilizing every geographic advantage that they have. Absolutely. But the fact that they're stateless also plays a role. It changes up the game theory of the equation. You yourself just referenced asymmetric warfare. Asymmetric warfare is inherently the case whenever you have a state power, a national government or something that is trying to conquer a stateless society, a society that has no head to sever, a society whose military might is not centralized to one body and not having decisions for it made by one central body, rather is dispersed amongst the population in much smaller groups, smaller militias and war bands and or companies, depending what kind of society we're talking about.
But that doesn't mean you're ANCAP. Right. As a matter of fact,
So
plenty of places in Zomia, they have village councils, tribal councils. They do have forms of quote unquote government. It's not just anarchy.
They had social hierarchies of many kinds, and that's been true across stateless societies.
Right.
They, generally speaking, did not have them that embody the characteristics of a state.
This is always what you run into. Is that
there's always
the devil's in the details and how you define things, and it's like, depending on how you define the stuff, like, is it ANCAP or is this truly anarchy? Well, no, it's not. Because there are village councils, there's tribal councils.
I don't think those things. Wait a minute, but I don't think those councils negate it being anarchy, because I don't think anarchy means no hierarchies. That would be impossible. There's always hierarchies.
Yeah.
Anarchy means that there's no state. So it comes from an to mean lack of, and archos to mean rulers, no rulers. And if you were to go ask 100 people on the street, what does anarchy mean? There will be some variance, but I think
you don't think hierarchies. You don't think hierarchies inside of a village that are going to make authoritative decisions on what they should do doesn't qualify as an archos?
So, as a general no, not categorically anyway, because as a general principle, the way it worked in Zomia, a tribal elder who was adjudicating a dispute, they were not passing legislative edicts that are then imposed by some police apparatus onto everybody. Instead, they were being invoked to this person was being sought, either hired or on a volunteer basis. The wisdom and decisiveness of this person was being sought voluntarily by the disputants in order to resolve their dispute. That's the characteristic of a stateless legal system, an arbitration-based legal system. And it absolutely, there was all kinds of social hierarchies. That's been true in every stateless society, and for that matter, every society in general. That hierarchy is part of society. If you have a football team, there may well be a coach. If you have a tattoo parlor, somebody owns it. If you have a chess club, it's likely got a director. A charity has a board of directors. There's all kinds of shit. We organize in different ways, and very frequently, more often than not, the ways that we organize within society have hierarchies embedded within them. Anarchists are not generally people who say you can't have any hierarchies in society. Anarchists are people who don't like one specific form of a hierarchy, in the form of an involuntary hierarchy being imposed onto everybody, i.e., a state, a monopoly on force, a ruling regime. If you simply have arbitrators that preside over disputes that the disputants brought to them voluntarily, that we wouldn't call that a ruler. You could say there's a distinction between rulership and leadership. We would not say, for instance, that the American Arbitration Association rules over insurance companies. That would sound goofy. They're just a service provider that's hired by the insurance companies. If anything, the insurers rule them. Would be, at least that would be closer.
Right.
So within Zomia, it's true that they leveraged their terrain, absolutely, and they were very good at that. The Zomian warbands, they constantly leveraged their terrain. But they also leveraged the very fact that there was nobody who could surrender for everyone else. There wasn't a king to capture or kill. That makes that on its face made it immensely difficult. That's been true across stateless societies. That's why the conquests of them have taken far longer and been far more protracted and expensive. And remember, in order to win a war where you're defending against conquest, you don't have to overthrow the enemy government, and you don't have to defeat all their forces in battle. You don't have to even kill their king or something. All you have to do is make it a greater cost to that government than it is a benefit. That's a much lower bar. And that bar, stateless societies have often been able to meet for centuries at a time, even against very large foreign powers. In the case of Zomia specifically, it wasn't until roughly the last century or two, depending where exactly we're talking about. What'd you say?
I didn't say anything.
Oh, that's weird. Maybe I'm going schizo. It wasn't until the last century or two that you started seeing governments be able to establish any major foothold of control there, and it has to do with things like the expansion of the highways. Oh, it's my own echo. I'm hearing myself. That's what that is. And, the growth and expansion of governmental military powers as they've targeted specific areas. There are still some stateless areas of Zomia, by the way. They're the very remote parts. My broader point, the reason I brought up Zomia was simply to illustrate that it is at least conceivable and possible for decentralized military forces, societies where their army isn't a central body, to be able to defend for long periods of time against foreign states. They've tended to do so for longer, and that assumes that you have a large society. If you have if a national government of presiding over a country of 10 million people invades a little village somewhere, and that village on its own, it's not like part of a broader network, it's just this one little village on its own, that government's going to win no matter what system they have in that village. But if you have, if there's a fighting chance to be had, if you have a society of millions of people, Zomia was up to 100 million people, at least on the high range of the estimates, at minimum well into the tens of millions. If you've got millions of people involved, then you, I think, by decentralizing your capacity to wield force, you make the task which your opponent is facing a much more difficult task, a much more complicated and expensive task.
Of course.
You also introduce certain elements that scare the shit out of leaders.
I think the only issue that we have is that I'm not going to concede. You and I are going to have fundamental disagreements on definitions. In other words, like I don't find your arguments for defining anarchy as not being synonymous with hierarchy. I don't find that convincing. I think that if you can find hierarchy, then you by definition don't have anarchy. There's an overarching archy.
The definition of anarchy is without rulers. That it's not no hierarchies at all. Even the people who created the word anarchy didn't mean it in that way.
Do you think that if a society has football teams, if they play football in a society, and those football teams have like team captains and coaches and stuff, and then the teams, maybe it's NFL and shit, the teams have owners, and the owners are part of a football league and stuff, right? Where there's all these hierarchical structures within football. That means the society can't be anarchy?
Yeah, so in other words, I don't know what the word would be. Maybe I need to make it. In terms of anarchy, I am to anarchy what an atheist is to Christianity. I don't even think anarchy exists. I don't.
Well, by the definition that says anarchy means no hierarchies, and of course it doesn't exist. It's not even logically possible for somebody to for somebody to argue, this almost echoes of argumentation ethics. For somebody to argue against hierarchies as a concept, or that hierarchies are inherently bad or don't exist or something, they're inherently they're asserting a hierarchy of knowledge between themselves and the person that they're informing. So it's not actually even logically possible to, without a performative contradiction, argue against hierarchy in some form or another.
Right, which is why I say that
I
this
wanna
always
add.
boils down to like definitions and semantics, because you would obviously define anarchy as just simply being, well, there's no state. And it's like, okay, well, there's no state in the way that you're accustomed to defining what a state is, but if you have any sort of hierarchy, even those hierarchies, especially in places where there is, like I said, we talked about homogeneity, right? If there's homogeneity with race, culture, religion, then cool, you can say there's no state, but there's still a substrate that takes the place of the state. It's like a proto-state.
Would you
No matter
say
how
that the
sliced it.
national
I do
National
kind of want to
Football
get
League?
into this, so the thing with the thing you're talking about, so a lot of the concept I talk about kind of comes from, so in the tradition of anarchism, in the anarchist ideologies, Pierre Joseph Proudhon, the way they typically defined anti-hierarchy was against involuntary hierarchy, and the way anarchists viewed, so the first ever anarchists, like Pierre Joseph Proudhon, at least ideologically speaking, his theory was that because now let me remind myself now, because I haven't read. Last time I read his book was a very long time ago, but a lot of the theory was around how property ought to be viewed. So Proudhon viewed property as he believed private property. By private property, he meant rentier property, which is basically property that relies on that isn't being used or occupied, cannot be property. Oh, the money left.
Oh,
Anyway, I was going
the
to
guy we were
explain. I was getting into occupancy and use versus private property. That was basically what, occupancy and use versus homesteading. There we go. And Proudhon, you probably know some of this. He believed in occupancy and use. So if land isn't occupied or used, it ought to be, well, it's not property. And that's what kind of distinguishes leftist anarchists and rightist anarchists. Rightist anarchists approach property with homesteading, while the leftist anarchists view it through occupancy and use. That's why there's so much confusion in the debates. So whenever anarcho-communists, for example, debate anarcho-capitalists, all the time the anarcho-communists, they don't exactly read their own literature. Because if they read their own literature, they would realize, a lot of the stuff they're talking about is like complete gobbledygook.
Yeah.
Because they'll talk about for example, oh yeah, hierarchy means that this is, this society has hierarchy. That means that it's a status society, which is not necessarily the case. Like I said previously, the way they viewed hierarchy was through involuntary hierarchy. Same with Ancaps, we also dislike involuntary hierarchy. But we defined it at homesteading while they defined it at occupancy and use. So they completely misunderstand their own literature.
Yeah, bro. I don't understand anarcho-communism at all. I don't even know how the fuck this would work. I don't know how.
It's anarcho-communism has been done. I'm not saying it works great, but it's been practiced. There's been plenty of communes and stuff. They're hungry, but they do function.
the problem is, and the real situation is, do you need the state for communism? And that's where there's this big disconnect, which I don't know. It's like, do you really need the state for communism? I believe yes. I believe that you do need the state.
It depends on the scale. If you're talking about the scale, if you're talking about the scale of like a country where it's far from a given that everybody there, wants communism and agrees to it, then you need a state.
Well, of course.
If you want communism, if you and a bunch of hippie friends want to, go out and start a commune somewhere, that doesn't require a state. Also, I just put in the Master Debaters channel a meme that you reminded me of when you were talking about the occupancy and use principle, Anthony.
Wait, but that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense, because at some point you're going to need a certain bureaucracy to track all those transactions, and therefore it's just
that's a problem with like economic calculation problem. But like I would say this, just very quickly, Jake. I mean, if we talk about anarcho-communism, communes, like I agree. Like on on a large scale, you're going to have an economic calculation problem. They may not have violence, but they are probably going to be starving. I mean, some of the origins of Thanksgiving Day was literally, an American commune being, having, food delivered by the Native Americans. So that's funny. But like, you can have, like socialism in the sense that, like, workers can cooperate in a business or worker cooperatives, and they can work within the market, and that's completely fine. That's like socialism that kind of works. It works in a sense that it works within a market. It's not like it utilizes real factor prices, or at least more capitalist based cooperatives. But when it comes to the large scale, I would agree. The economic calculation problem becomes a thing.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, it's just that. It's also, I do believe that for the most part, you need a state. You need some sort of state. You need some sort of bureaucracy for it to work. But also, I guess not only that, I think that they're conflating charity with communism. Because at the same time, we can all make like GoFundMes and all contribute. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's necessarily communism. It's just charity, But I think that's where they're conflating it, and and then also, I guess that people who aren't earning money or getting money from a certain form, in a lot of money in particular, and they didn't earn it, that makes a huge problem. It's kind of like if Elon Musk, right, gave every single person $1 million, it wouldn't make, or if he had the opportunity to give every single person in the United States $1 million, like nothing would get done at all. There'd be such a horrible, like no productivity, nothing would get done. Because we're all good on money. The fucking pizza delivery, man, they're not gonna fucking give you the pizza. They probably are gonna take fucking 2 days to get you that pizza. They might not even give you pizza at all. They said fuck it. They quit. Everybody's gonna quit their job, man.
Fuck it, I quit.
I think if he gave everybody $1 million, that's money that was not functionally liquid prior. Certainly, what is it, 350 million times $1 million, that much money being injected into circulation that presumably was not prior, that it would just be massive inflation.
Yeah, that's the problem.
It wouldn't be true that everyone's good on money.
No.
Because what that money buys you would be significantly decreased. Giving everybody $1 million, it's kind of saying everyone's richer because I gave everyone $1 million is kind of like saying everyone's taller because 10 inches now counts as a foot. So you're more feet tall.
Yeah. Exactly. Yep. And it would just cause massive inflation. that's a big problem with, I guess, like communistic, arguments like that. But I guess also just communism is just going to create inflation as well. And then,
well,
I don't know.
communism in theory doesn't involve money. In
Yeah,
practice, they did use currencies in communist societies. But the communist, the utopia is they want to abolish money. They want a gift economy where everything is
yeah,
free.
The way,
yeah,
Marx defines communism is very different from how a lot of people view communism. So, the way Marx defines communism would be, the end stage of like human development. So the end stage would be potentially a stage where, scarcity doesn't exist, money doesn't exist, potentially, because it's like we have all this abundance and stuff from a previous,
yeah.
dialectics. So in that sense, yeah. But then Lenin came in, and Lenin made this, he separated the term socialism and communism. So socialism is, according to Lenin, was this transitionary state, where the state would own the means of production, so that in the end it could eventually you know get communism, I guess.
Well, I
I mean,
mean,
technically speaking, like a free market capitalist society, whatever you want to call it, can be by definition communist, theoretically.
what?
It's
I'm
just like,
sorry.
socialists would dispute that. Anyway, continue.
Well, okay, look, but Lenin did say that socialism is the precursor to communism. So, I mean, it does lead to
Yeah.
one thing does lead to another. However, I was going to ask y'all a question. Do you think that in a capitalist society, people need to be poor in order for people to be rich?
No.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
We,
I'm like,
we,
there's
we
no
do
way.
not
I mean,
live we do
to
not live in a zero
characterize
sum game. Whenever somebody gains under capitalism, it is because and at least in a free market, if you create some sort of good or service that other people value, then and you gain a lot of money from it, then you've created more value to other people's than what you only gain a fraction of the value that you've created for everyone else, because that's your profit.
Yeah, no, you're right.
so
You're fucking right. Yeah.
compared to most people throughout most of human history, in modern America, everybody is rich.
Yeah. Because I was thinking
To
about
say
that
that
whole thing. Yeah. What were you
to say
saying?
that some must be poor for others to be rich is kind of like saying that some must be sick in order for others to be healthy.
Yeah, that's a horrible argument. What the fuck? Yeah, nah, man.
Wealth is not a fixed pie. The richer
Yeah,
some people get, the richer everybody else is.
yeah, exactly.
Because when you
Well,
have
as
large
long as their
concentrations of
wealth is being used in the in investment into capital, which is the logical conclusion of getting wealth, I guess. So it kind of presupposes that.
Yeah,
yeah, when you have large concentrations of capital, then that serves as a precursor to investment, where you can create new enterprise and you can expand existing enterprise. And by doing so, you're adding to competition on one hand, in prices in provision of consumers' goods, and for that matter, capital goods. You're adding to competition for wages in hiring workers. So, on one hand, you're increasing provide. You're also
yo, bro, you're glitching out.
All right. I don't know how much of that I was glitched out for. Am I still glitched out?
Pretty much everything you said was glitched out. Now we can hear you fine.
No, you're good
Okay.
now.
I was just saying, by creating and expanding enterprise, you are adding to the demand for labor and adding to the supply of consumers' goods. Both of these things are increasing the bargaining power of the poorest of people in our society, or at least the poorest of economic participants anyway. So large concentrations of capital where some people are very rich, that makes the poorest of people richer too. In fact, I would argue that's a primary driver of poor people becoming less poor. And the poor people of today are far less poor than any other time in history.
True. That is true. And a lot of that has happened, especially in like certain countries like China, because of what they're doing. What is the government doing? They're stepping back and they're letting people settle it out by themselves. Right? They're not trying to intervene all the time in the economy. They're not trying to always intervene, which, I believe there should be no government interference in the economy, really. But there's a huge, go ahead.
I think the rightful place of government is in the history books.
In the trash.
Yeah. In the garbage.
In the fucking trash.
Certainly. Yeah, man. That I think that we could govern ourselves. Now, I don't believe that. I don't disagree with the voluntary government. That I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. The problem is we'd all have to agree that it would need to be a small government. We were not going to spend shit in different areas where we don't need to. All
right.
But
I think you're doing the thing. You're doing the thing that I was doing at the end of my minarchist days, where you try to strip away all of the coercion from government, and what you're left with, so if you strip away all the coercion, all the involuntary shit, you no longer have taxation. You no longer have a mandatory judiciary monopoly, right? I don't have to bring my dispute before this government court. I could bring it before a different court if I want.
Yeah.
You no longer have a mandatory monopoly of rights enforcement and so on. So once you strip away all the coercion from government, what you're left with is just kind of a weird, like, security company and arbitration firm. And there's no reason to expect it to be a monopoly. It would just be one of many. So it's not really a government anymore. I think the idea of voluntary government is kind of like saying consensual rape.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds good, but I don't know how it would work, really.
It just wouldn't be if you just strip all the coercion away from government. Yeah, that sounds great. And it's not a government anymore. It would just be one of many security companies.
Oh, wow. Holy shit. No, you're right. Oh, my God. Yeah, no, you're right.
And then if you strip all the coercion away, and so now it's just one of many security companies, congratulations, you now have anarcho-capitalism.
Well, I still think that there should be coercion for criminals. Like, I think that if you really want a society that runs...
I meant initiatory coercion. So, for example, if you walk up and punch me, I would call that coercion. But if I punch you back, that's not what I'm talking about. Are you familiar with the non-aggression principle?
No.
You know what?
I'm new into anarcho-capitalism.
Sure. You seem like the non-aggression principle kind of comes intuitively to you. This was true of me too. The non-aggression principle is the moral principle that you should not initiate force or fraud against a person or property of anybody else. Or said another way, do not deprive someone else, an innocent, of control over themselves or their things. Do not act on the person or property of somebody else against their will.
Yeah.
That means don't steal, don't murder, don't rape, don't assault, don't rob, and so on. And when somebody violates the non-aggression principle, it does not violate the non-aggression principle to use force back. You could say that, so the non-aggression principle, it's like the central principle of libertarian philosophy. And, okay, there's three kinds of people: a statist, a libertarian, and a pacifist. A pacifist will not walk up and punch you. And if you walk up and punch a pacifist, they will not punch back. A libertarian will not walk up and punch you. But if you walk up and punch a libertarian, they may punch back. And a statist will walk up and punch you.
Yeah.
Punch being analogy for the use of force.
Yeah.
The libertarianism distinguishes between initiating force and reciprocating force. We think it's fine to reciprocate force if someone else initiates, but initiating is bad.
Yeah.
And we characterize initiations of force as aggression. We call that aggression. So it would be aggression for you to attack me. It would not be aggression for me to defend myself against you using force. Or to say, punish you after the fact by, taking compensation from you forcibly or something. So if I should have said, instead of saying coercion, if you strip aggression away from the state, such as taxation, what you're left with no longer resembles a state.
Wow. So wait, but what about the law? That's my thing.
So the way law works in an anarcho-capitalist system, instead of having like a government that taxes you and funds like, a local police department that has a monopoly, instead of that, it's left up to the free market. The way I think that looks in a modern society is direct physical protection of you and your property is provided for the company that has kind of a unique economic advantage to provide it to you cheaper than anyone else could, which is your insurance company. The company which indemnifies you and your property is able to sell you physical protection of you and your property cheaper than anybody else could, because by providing it, they're cutting into their costs that would otherwise have to be paid out in claims. At least, in the aggregate of doing this for many people, it cuts into their claims costs. So they can do it cheaper than anyone else can. And that means most likely you're getting your protection from the same company that insures you. So in the anarcho-capitalist society, we replace police departments with insurance companies. And there's not a geographic monopoly. There's no jurisdiction. Wherever you are, you can choose between many, many insurance companies. They're each competing. They're competing in quality and they're competing in price, right? So you choose your insurance company, and then that insurance company has a series of rights that they advertise they will protect. Generally speaking, they'll protect your body from assault. They'll protect your property from vandalism and so on. And there might be little quirks that are differences here and there. But these firms are naturally going to have disputes with each other. For example, if I rob you, right, you go to your rights enforcement company, your insurer, about it, and you want to collect damages from me. They want to punish me and all that. I have my own insurance company, and they don't want any of that to happen. They're interested in protecting me. So the two firms, they have a dispute between them. The worst thing they could do financially would be go to war. That's kind of the obvious thing, is don't they just go to war? They don't, because that's the most expensive possible thing they could do.
Yeah.
It also, the outcomes can be unpredictable. The owners of the company might get killed. it's nasty business, and they can't
that's
externalize. They can't
yeah, it's
externalize the cost through taxes. They would have to pass it on to the customers, but the customers can take their business elsewhere to cheaper competitors. They'd lose their customers. So,
Yeah.
what they do instead, the much cheaper option, is they bring it before an arbitrator. That's like a private court that sells the service of dispute resolution. We actually already have this. In America, insurance companies already exist, and they constantly have disputes with each other. Now, when insurance companies in modern America have disputes, they don't bring those disputes to government courts, generally speaking. Government courts are slow, very expensive. It's a cumbersome process. What they do instead is they bring it before like the American Arbitration Association or the Mediation Center, right? Private courts that sell the service of dispute resolution. And they've often got seasoned insurance professionals to adjudicate disputes between insurance companies. As opposed to like just going to a government civil court judge who has to be a jack of all trades, purveying over all fields of civil law, whether it's insurance or family law or something, it's the same judge. So the American Arbitration Association, they'll have a set of policies that they advertise as the policies they'll uphold in disputes that are brought before them. Those are policies designed to attract both pairs or both disputants to a dispute in order to attract them to bring the dispute to them.
Yeah.
So in Ancapistan, like a hypothetical modern anarcho-capitalist society, you choose what company protects your rights, in part based on what courts that company has agreed to bring their disputes to in disputes with other companies. So in this sense, you as a customer, you as an individual can, to some extent, choose what law you are under.
Oh shit! So you're saying like kind of like a tribal thing, like where you have these people who want to fucking kill each other live over here. These other people who don't want to kill each other.
No. What I just described. First of all, there's no killing in this situation. What I just described is not geographic. It doesn't matter where you live. Like, you at your house might have a different insurance company than your next door neighbor. And that means that, okay, let's say there's 3 neighbors, right? Neighbor A, B, and C. Neighbor A has insurance company A. Neighbor B has insurance. No, neighbor A has insurance company 1. Neighbor B has insurance company 2. Neighbor C has insurance company 3. Right? So if a dispute arises between A and B, that means whatever court has been agreed to between companies 1 and 2 is going to adjudicate that dispute. Maybe that court is Amazing Adjudication is the name of the court. And Amazing Adjudication has a policy that says, adverse possession is not a legitimate means of acquiring property. So if there's a property dispute involving adverse possession between A and B, then per the court chosen by 1 and 2, Amazing Adjudication, adverse possession does not qualify as a means by which to acquire property, and therefore A wins the dispute, because B was trying to adversely possess some of A's property. Now, B and C have a dispute of the same nature, right? B is also trying to adversely possess some of C's property. Now, this means that companies 2 and 3 are bringing the dispute before the court that those 2 have agreed to, which might be a different court than 1 and 2 have. Like 2 has an agreement to use Amazing Adjudication with Court 1, but with Company 1, but with Company 3, they've agreed to use Somewhat Decent Court Company. It's called the Somewhat Decent Court Company, and the Somewhat Decent Court Company has a policy that says adverse possession is allowed within certain parameters. And B meets those parameters. So, person C, in this case, they do lose some of their property to B. B has adversely possessed it, whereas person A does not. And it's because the court that was adjudicating between A and B says that adverse possession is not allowed, but the court adjudicating between B and C says that it is allowed. And maybe person B was intending to use adverse possession, so they prefer companies that try to agree to courts with other firms that adverse possession is allowed. Whereas person A doesn't want to do adverse possession and is very worried about it being done to him. So he made a point of using an insurance company that seeks out court agreements, agreed upon courts that are anti-adverse possession. Whereas C didn't care about it very much. So he chose an insurer that does not make a point of prioritizing use of courts that are anti-adverse possession. So I realize that sounds convoluted, but the outcome is that you as an individual can choose what's important to you in terms of what law you will be under. Does that make sense so far?
Not really. Not really, man. I'm actually kind of confused now because
I have an audio book that I could send you.
I don't know how like the law would be like. Would there? So there's no like universal binding laws.
Well, there are some. The law is only different in a few ways. So, for example, it's not like court, Amazing Adjudication, and the Somewhat Decent Court Company. It's not like one of them says murder is allowed and the other one says murder is not allowed. Some things all of them are going to agree are not allowed, such as murder and robbery and, burglary and rape and stuff. Things that are obvious will be illegal in every court, and that's historically been completely true in actual private legal systems.
Wow.
Where you find variance is the things that people don't agree on, like adverse possession. One that in modern America you might see variance in, foreseeably, is abortion. So, for example, a society where people have a very hostile attitude toward abortion, people will tend to choose insurance companies that want to treat abortion as a crime such that if you're carrying my child and you abort the child, I can sue you for that. I have a claim where you've done something, and I can go after you for damages. Whereas if you have so you might find that in, Dallas or something, whereas in San Francisco, people favor insurance companies that say abortion is allowed, and so they seek to use courts. Those companies agree to use courts that recognize it as, as something you have getting an abortion is something you have the right to do. So it's going to reflect cultural norms, but it's also plausible that in the same city even, there will be mixed law on it, where if you have a dispute, let's say you're a woman and you get pregnant by two different men, one of them has insurance company A and one of them has B. You have C, right? Insurance company A is pro-abortion. Insurance company B is anti. And with A, your firm uses a court that is pro, and with B, it uses a court that's anti. So
maybe you should come in here and let him know and explain why.
Father A, you could say, sues you for abortion, but it's found that, the court that y'all are using, you win the case because that court finds abortion to be allowed. But with B, you get sued for it, and that court finds it's not allowed. So even the same person is, in a sense, under different law, depending on who their dispute is with.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with the idea that, insurance companies can just make up their own laws. Unless maybe you agree to it.
And I'm inclined to believe that with something like abortion, no matter what system you have, it's generally speaking, it's going to reflect the norms of that and values of the people in that society.
Yeah, because like even if I thought about that, yeah, even if oh man, well, what if like let's say there's
believe
someone
in the
who's
Napis
going
law.
to get an abortion, you can
Absolutely.
file a claim for that as well.
I mean, in theory, you can sue anybody for anything, but whether you're going to be found to be owed anything that depends on the policy of the court that has been agreed to between your insurance company and their insurance company.
Mm.
And what that court's policy is decided based on is what demand they're trying to cater to in terms of disputants.
Abortion is either a rights violation or
if
not.
they think that more insurance companies will be, anti-abortion than pro, not necessarily in terms of what the owners believe in, but in terms of
I'm an evictionist.
what they expect that their clientele will prefer to be under, then the court will likely be anti-abortion or vice versa. So it's all driven by, in this scenario, it's law that's all driven by market demand.
Yeah, I've thought about that.
In this scenario, law is a good kind of like food or something. You decide what the food is when you go to the store and buy food, right? When you go buy a box of Frosted Mini Wheats, that's sending a signal to the store and then up the chain ultimately to the farmer saying more wheat, or specifically more Frosted Mini Wheats.
Yeah.
You're saying that's what should be produced, is Frosted Mini Wheats when you go buy it.
That makes sense. And then I guess so y'all don't believe in like prison, or do you? Like a privatized prison?
I think the only scenario where prison makes sense in an ANCAP paradigm is when you have a criminal that is so egregious that if the insurance company of the victim let that person roam free, they would be looked at as negligent. And say it's a scenario where the person is spared execution. Like an example of that. Imagine you walk into a school in San Francisco and you shoot a bunch of kids. So you can imagine that the death penalty is probably not going to be very popular in a city like San Francisco, very progressive, like woke kind of city. They're probably going to have an anti-death penalty trend among their courts. So in this scenario, you have a court that says no death penalty. That's off the table. But you can't let the school shooter go free. If you're the insurance company that represents one of the parents or something, who's going after the school shooter in court, and then you let that school shooter who's found guilty continue to roam the streets and potentially kill more kids, you would be looked at as a completely negligent, incompetent company, and you would lose thousands of customers. So in this scenario, you stand to lose more money than by not sending them to prison than you would have to pay to put them in prison. And so only in that kind of a scenario do I think prisons make sense. And the outcome is that I think we would have a teensy tiny fraction of the prison population that we do now. Most people in prison do not belong in prison.
Yeah.
And that's not even just talking about victimless crimes. Most of the people in prison, at least as of a few years ago, most of the people in prison were in there for victimless crimes. But even if you subtract the people whose crimes are victimless, therefore, in my view, didn't do anything wrong, and you just look at the people whose crimes had victims, even most of the people whose crimes had victims don't need to go to prison for it. It's needlessly expensive and inefficient and wasteful. If somebody steals, stealing is bad, but there's much more efficient ways to deal with it than spending $100,000 a year to incarcerate this person.
Yeah, of course. I think
Even
it
most
should be
violent
given to
crimes.
like the rapists, the murderers, the worst of the worst, to be honest.
I would go as far as to say, and I'm not a rapist and I don't endorse rape. Even a rapist, I think it generally makes more sense to do restitution, big restitution, like life-changing restitution, where, the rapist is on the hook for, half their income for 10 years or something like that. It's serious.
Yeah.
But it's still restitution. And historically, anarcho-capitalist legal systems have almost invariably dealt with crime using primarily or entirely restitution.
Oh wow! And if they don't pay the restitution, what will happen?
So Ireland had an interesting answer to that. In the Brehon system, they would enslave you.
Damn.
Yeah, if somebody did not pay their weregild, which was blood money, it was restitution. If somebody did not pay their weregild, they could be enslaved. To my understanding, it was somewhat rare, but it did happen. They become treated as effectively the property, at least for within a limited period, perhaps, and within certain limitations. They were treated as the property of their victim or the victim's family if the victim died. And then that family would lease that person out as an indentured servant to like a nearby farmer or something, who would then pay rent for that slave.
Wow. Damn, okay.
I'm fully on board with I think that, for example, if you have like a serial child molester, like enslave that person. And you could even have like prison-like facilities, but where you make sure the person is, as far as possible, the person is being a net producer there, who's producing more than they're eating.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that idea. Kind of like prison. Yeah, no, I agree with
and
that.
The person is paying, they're producing, and the money is going to the victims.
Workers' camp.
Yeah, for real.
Anthony, you were going to say something?
I would say, though, under, libertarian ethics for voluntary slavery, the ownership of someone. Now, that is, technically, a contradiction. However, you can have something like, like you said, where, not like you said, but for example, you could do experimentation on someone. So if someone brutally raped children or something like that, then you could perform scientific experimentation on them. And for restitutions, for example, then you can, they will have to, for example, I don't know, basically just on that line.
Burn them alive.
In the case of execution, I think more often than not, the death penalty, rather than being something that's actually carried out once imposed by a court, I think it's most likely to serve as a position of bargaining leverage in order to foster a negotiated settlement, essentially. Where if, I murder you, I leave your family behind destitute now. But they sue and I'm found guilty of the murder. I can now be executed, or some comparable lifelong slavery or something. They now have absolute leverage to get me to negotiate with them for some lesser thing, because the discretion, it's at their discretion to enforce the verdict or decide whether or not they want to uphold the execution, go forward with it. So they can essentially squeeze whatever they want out of me. Maybe I'm sentenced to execution, but the outcome is slavery because I agree to that in exchange for my life.
Yeah.
Oh, and they do have there's kind of a natural floor to such negotiated settlements because of the value of my corpse if I am executed. I have organs, I have eyes, I have stuff that could be valuable on the market. So at minimum, whatever I am offering to them in exchange for not executing me would have to be of greater value than my organs and stuff would command.
Yeah, kind of like, I guess, rehabilitation centers, but not really. Like, basically centers where you work and you pay the person back. Yeah, no, that's a really pretty good idea. However, I do still believe that coercion, the only one thing I do disagree with some anarcho-capitalists on is coercion. I think the only way coercion should be used is in really, really bad crimes, like rape, like murder, stuff like that.
But Ancaps are not against using force against like a murderer or a rapist. By principle of estoppel, they've justified using force against them when they used force against somebody else. So that's not a point of contention.
Oh, okay. I'm just learning, man. Learning.
Yeah, we're only against initiating aggression.
Yeah.
We're against initiating aggression, and we're against disproportionate force. For example, if I come into your store and I shoplift a candy bar, you can't pull out a Desert Eagle and blow my brains out. You can use force against me, yes, but not to that degree, because what I did is nowhere near to that degree.
Maybe you try to you shoplifted a candy bar, and then you tempted to brutally rape someone with a candy bar or something. I don't know. But that's an absurd.
Sheesh.
I was just
Sure. I mean, yeah, you still can't, I don't think you can execute me for it. Personally, at least, purely from a libertarian ethical standpoint, I don't think you can execute people for anything other than murder. Because what justifies a punishment is having committed equal or greater force against the victim. I think you cede the rights you violate in others to the same degree.
Yeah. We just have to be careful, in the punishment, though, because we don't also want to turn into, eye for eye, because, it's not... We can't just chop off someone's freaking arm because they smacked someone or stole from someone.
Well, but wait a minute, that's not eye for an eye. Eye for an eye means that if I cut your eye out, you can now cut my eye out. Exactly, and I think that's perfectly fair.
Exactly. No, that's what I meant. My bad. Yeah.
Well, but saying that I smack someone and get my arm cut off, that's different. That's very different because it's disproportionate. If I cut your arm off, it would not be disproportionate to cut my arm off. But if all I do is smack you, then it is disproportionate to cut my arm off. It's not disproportionate to smack me. Libertarians
that makes sense.
Libertarians usually recognize a proportionality doctrine, where the degree of force that you, the criminal, initiated against someone, now that can be done to you. But not more than that. So, you can't execute somebody for shoplifting. You can't... If somebody, writes on your car with their finger using dust, like they write in the dust, technically an act of vandalism, you don't get to keep them as a rape slave for 20 years.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Unless they're okay with it.
Totally justified. Yeah, no. Like what you just said. Yeah, no, you're right.
I just had a random thought. Would it count as slavery if you genetically engineered women that have the body of a woman but the mind of a dog, and then you have them as a pet?
Bro, why did you just think about that? What the fuck? What the fuck, bro? This makes me question so much shit about
That's a very good question.
Oh my god, bro.
Okay,
he's
imagine-
he's a
Sex all
gooner.
day.
He's a gooner.
Imagine
professional
Belle.
gooner.
So imagine Belle Delphine, right?
Oh no,
But-
not Belle Delphine.
It's Belle Delphine. However, she has the unconditional loyalty and absolute love of a dog.
What is she barking?
And okay, Belle Delphine barking would just be adorable.
All right, no, but what you meant was like, imagine like Belle Delphine, but she's just very, very loyal to you, very nice to you, and extremely, extremely, extremely loving, basically.
And very
Well, no,
Just
but
so- what-
wait a minute. I mean, she has the mind of a dog, though.
Yeah,
I didn't say
I
she-
know. I was just,
I didn't say she can talk and stuff. No, she acts like a dog. Like you can play fetch with her and stuff.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Interesting.
saying. I'm like, you fucking what the fuck, man? You just want to have sex all day, bro? You fucking gooner.
That'd be cool. I've done that. There's been many
I
days
can't
of
wait.
my life.
I
where
can't
that-
wait when the
that's what
world
I did.
becomes cyberpunk, and then they come out with like auto master masturbator machines
Fucking
That'd be great.
he's gonna go to
with
Belle
like a
Delphine.
Wait a minute,
VR with a VR goggle.
Dude.
You know,
I have 3 pocket pussies within arm's reach right now. What do you mean?
no, bro. One that like you could strap on and it does all the
Oh,
work for you,
no.
and then you put your VR in, and then you fuck a
Uh-oh.
bitch in it. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, you mean
What
like
is
a
going on?
Black Mirror level simulation?
Yes, like a auto masturbator. You know what I mean?
I feel like the thing with
An
simulated
auto
sex is that
machine.
it would bother me immensely to know that it's not real. That's also the basic reason that like robot women, even if they look and feel like real, if they're not sentient like robot women, as like sex dolls, don't appeal to me. Personally, I need it to be real. That's part of it for me. I need to know that that she's experiencing what I'm doing to her. That's a huge part of it for me.
Yeah, for real, bro. On God, no. You
Just
right
don't
about
don't
that
think
shit,
about it
yeah.
too hard. You know what I'm saying?
No, bro. What the fuck?
Yeah, but
bro, you know you want the girl to fucking moan loud when you're all in. There's no way you don't think that. There's no. There's no way
you can simulate you can simulate the moans, but if it's a simulation, then the knowledge that it's a simulation would bother me. Likewise, imagine you're fucking a real chick. Imagine you're fucking a real chick, and she's moaning, but you happen to know that she's faking those moans. That it's a performance. Would that not bother you?
Oh, no, yeah, that bothers the fuck out of me.
That would be for me. That would be a deal break. I would never see that girl again.
Yeah, I'd never sleep with her again. Fuck that.
So
It
for
doesn't
the
matter
same
what.
reason, I'm not very I hope that simulations exist. I would probably still prefer that to, a hand. I think it would be a good effect it would have good effects on the world if everybody had access to these simulations.
Yeah, for real, man.
Or these dog women.
It would solve the incel problem for sure.
Yeah, you just you go to a pet store and bring home Belle Delphine, but with the mind of a dog.
Bro, I would split Belle Delphine, bro. Oh God, though. Yeah, I feel like any dude would, bro.
With dog Belle Delphine, she's perfectly content to just lick each other all day, every day, and stuff.
What the fuck, man?
Yeah,
No
you just
wonder
gotta
fucking
feed
dog
her
double.
and take her to the toilet and wash her, and you're good.
Okay, no, the part of it for the dog women thing, you have to. They can't be fully a dog because you have to make sure they can take care of going to the bathroom and so. I don't want to have to walk
Just
her
give them
and pick up her
like
shit off the ground.
a mind of a cat because they know how to take care of themselves, right? For the most part.
Yeah, you'd need a cat then. Yeah, that makes more sense.
Cats don't wipe their asses, so that's a problem.
You would that I mean
And
that's
also
the only
cats-
downside.
wait a
That's the
minute,
only
you-
downside. You would have to wash them.
Cats are not like unconditionally loyal and loving and devoted to you and shit. Cats are very like fucking catty, you know?
It depends on
Yeah,
the
they
cat.
are.
Depends on
They
the cat.
can be. Yeah.
Women are already too cat-like.
Yeah, that'd make even.
Yeah.
Oh God, bro,
Yeah.
you'd be like,
And you know the
"Come
beautiful
on,
thing
girl."
the beautiful thing about dogs is the more love you give a dog, the more love the dog will give you. Women work
be
the
like-
opposite way.
You'd be like, "Come on, girl, suck my dick," and then you fucking like freaking just like nails your dick, bro. Like freaking scratches your dick, and it leaves a mark. Fucking hell.
It's like
See,
down.
with
You
cats-
gotta get the water spray. Hey, get down.
Down, stop
With-
scratching my penis.
The way cats work, the more attention you give a cat, the less attention the cat will give you. The cat goes away. And, you know, if you really want to pet the cat and, cuddle the cat and stuff, the cat will walk away. But if you're like pushing the cat away and ignoring the cat and kicking the cat won't leave you alone. Right? And that's very much how human women think too, which is annoying as fucking shit. But dogs are the opposite. The more love you give a dog, the more love the dog will give you. It's perfect.
Then why, bro? Why did I just now like realize that? It's like I wanted to deny that so much about women, and I just wanted to deny it. But now that I actually recognize that, yeah, man, that's so fucking true.
It will serve you well to keep it in mind in all of your interactions with women.
Oh fucking hell, bro! Because it's like if you try to be a real big sweetheart lover boy, doesn't give
it dries them up.
But the second you don't give her shit, she wants you. Like, what the fuck, man?
Yep.
Crazy.
Men are more like dogs in this regard.
Yeah.
At least for me personally, the more love a woman gives me, the more I value her, the more attractive she becomes to me, even.
Yeah.
You know, a 6 that's like a girl who's like physically looking at her like she's a 6. If she's like head over heels in love with me, she's now an 8, at least. Women work the opposite way, though. If a guy that she would consider a 6, you know, in general, it's less about looks for women, but if a guy she would consider a 6 is like, you know, crazy in love with her, now he's a 3.
Yeah.
Women are annoying.
Yeah. Can't live with
For
them,
real,
can't live
bro.
without
Tell
them,
me
you know what I
about
mean?
Yeah, but like if they just so let's give them the minds of dogs, you know?
Well, I think it's kind of crazy how we're debating like whether or not to put a brain of a cat or a dog in a woman. Which one will make them more subservient and better for our ends, you know?
I'm on team dog all the way.
I don't know.
I wish I was attracted to dogs. I'm not. But I really wish that that would be so perfect. That would be so much
That's kind of
simpler.
nasty, bro.
No, but I'm not attracted to dogs. I'm disgusted by the idea of fucking a dog.
Even bringing that up is kind of nasty, bro.
I don't want to, like, I'm not into it.
Okay, I get it, bro.
What?
Bro.
Nothing.
I get it.
I just said bro was thinking about it. Fucking hell.
You know what I feel bad for though? Is I feel bad for the men that are like sexually and romantically interested in hamsters.
What?
There are people that
I've
shove
never
hamsters
heard
up.
of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
What?
like if you fuck a hamster once, it's dead.
Oh well, no shit, Sherlock. You stuffed fucking. What?
All right, guys.
What the
How about
fuck?
we move away from this topic of discussion, please?
All
No
right, fine.
shit, Sherlock, but no, I don't even want to describe what the
Yeah,
fuck.
I don't even
going
want
on
to talk
here.
about this
All
anymore,
right, Jake.
bro.
Have you been on Instagram Reels recently? If you have,
I don't-
just
No.
to let you know, every time there's a reel that talks about having a class sex hamster, that doesn't mean that's an actual thing. It's just satirical, you know. It's just dark humor.
I haven't.
I don't think that's an actual thing. I hope it's not a real thing.
I don't know what that is. I mean, I know what Instagram is. I'm not like on there.
Fair enough.
I up until a few minutes ago, I thought that Instagram is like when you have your grandmother on speed dial.
That's funny. That's funny.
That's a good joke.
That's funny.
You know what's
That's actually
retarded?
funny.
This is. I'm surprised, Anthony. Aren't you like 20 or 19 or
No.
something? Do you even? How old are
19,
you?
yeah. 19.
Okay. How the fuck do you even know what speed dial is?
What even is speed? I don't even know what speed dial is. I'll be honest. I just heard of it. I don't even know what it does.
Oh my god. Okay, speed dial was a function of like older phones. You know, before we just had contacts in a smartphone. Speed dial was a function that allowed you to dial call a particular person just with a single number. Like if you press 2 and then call.
Okay. Okay. I see.
Right, you would have to configure. You had to configure that, you know, I want my, I don't know, I want my mom's drug dealer's daughter to be my number 1 speed dial. So if I press 1 and then call, it calls my mom's drug dealer's daughter.
Yeah. I mean, people still use. I mean, a lot of the time, people have bought, you know, a mobile phone number, you know, and you know, a landline.
Fuck landlines.
Landlines, bro. Fucking landline.
Fucking landlords.
So funny.
We love landlords. I love landlords.
I want to start a company that sells landline phones and then become like a global empire, like a huge company, just so I can say I'm the landlord.
I want to make a YouTube video called Why I Love Landlords. Just to piss people off.
I'm trying to become a landlord.
I think being a landlord's good.
Landlord.
If they offer an actual service that people need. Not everyone wants to buy the house in which they live in. Some people, they want to move from one place to the next.
When I hear socialists like attacking landlords, to me it sounds no different than if I were to hear them like attacking McDonald's for like withholding cheap. You're making me pay for the basic necessity of food. You're withholding the food from me. You're making it scarce. You're creating artificial scarcity of the cheeseburgers by paywalling them.
Damn. And there's just it's like no incentive, bro. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, in communism and socialism, no incentive whatsoever, bro. Like, how the fuck is this gonna be sustainable?
Yeah, if you want a full refutation of like the LTV, you should watch my YouTube video on it. And then I have another video on the economic calculation problem, which is also really good. And why?
Oh, send me those, bro.
I got you. It's on my YouTube
Because
channel.
I'm like libertarian conservative at the moment, but I'm really looking into anarcho-capitalism. The thing is, I just don't understand everything in it, and then at the same time, also, it's like you kind of have to realize that it's really up to the people on what's going to happen. Which
I
is
should
good.
point out,
I can send you
somebody
some
can
videos on
be
it.
somebody can be a libertarian and a conservative and an anarcho-capitalist. These things are not actually contradictory to each other. For example,
Yeah.
Hans Hermann Hoppe. Hans Hermann Hoppe is all three. He's definitely a libertarian, as in, you know, he's an ethical philosopher of libertarianism. He pioneered argumentation ethics, which is a libertarian ethical argument.
Damn.
And he's also he seems to be a conservative in his cultural leanings. You know, he's an old German guy, and he's about what you would expect from an old German guy. He's not like I don't mean like Nazi, by the way. He's very anti-Nazi. He's not like a Nazi, but he just he conservative vibes
loves
off him.
all
Oh wait, you know what he
different
says?
races.
Yeah, he says things like, you know, that he doesn't like. He thinks that the following groups of people are antithetical to liberty. He doesn't want to like murder them or anything, but homosexuals, nature worshippers, leaders of alternative lifestyles, non-family centric lifestyles.
Didn't he say that? Go ahead, sorry.
But he's definitely also an anarcho-capitalist. So
yeah,
that would be an example of somebody who's all three. My point being that you don't have to choose between libertarian, conservative, and anarcho-capitalist. They're all compatible. Libertarianism
I'm an
means,
anarcho-capitalist libertarian. That's what I would say.
Yeah, me too. Libertarianism means that you embraced an aggression principle. That you're against aggression. You're against the initiation of force against peaceful people.
And the freest market there can be as well.
Well, that's implicit in the first part. Because if you don't have initiation of aggression, then there's nobody restricting the market.
Yeah.
Conservative means that, you know, you're for the conservation of older cultural values, maybe religious or family-centric or whatever. And then anarcho-capitalist means that you're for a total privatization, where there's no state, there's simply free market enterprise is the means by which all production takes place and ends get satisfied. Notice these one of them is a moral philosophy, one of them is a cultural leaning, and then one of them is a system prescription. They have nothing inherently to do with each other, and they're perfectly compatible.
Makes sense.
And it's the best ideology ever. Hey, don't worry. I'll send you some YouTube videos. I guess there's 2 YouTube channels that you want to check out. One of them is KingSithis, which is a really dope-ass YouTube channel. The other one is Liquid Zulu. His
Mr.
YouTube
Beast.
Liquid Zulu's YouTube videos are, I think, probably he's the best ANCAP YouTuber, I think. Personally.
Yeah, man. The thing that made me, because I used to be really libertarian back then, and then I went really conservative. And now I'm coming back to my senses, and I'm like, because you know how the libertarians used to be really left, bro, because they only have the left libertarians and, you know, the Libertarian Party and all that shit.
Yeah.
But like now, the one that really got me back into libertarian conservatism and like anarcho-capitalism is Mentis Wave, bro. That dude's awesome.
Yeah, Mantis Wave is also a good YouTuber. Yeah.
I don't know Mantis Wave.
Mantis Wave, you should check him out. He's good. He has
you know
many
what's
good
crazy?
videos.
So there was like a libertarian, conservative, anarcho-capitalist YouTuber a while back. I don't know what he's doing these days, but he got pretty big. His name was TJ Brown. Wait, why do I feel like I'm getting that off now?
There's MRH Legacy. He's good too.
What?
MRH Legacy. He's great.
What the fuck?
And Danny Duchamp.
Why do
or Danny Duchamp
Okay,
or
for
something like that.
For some reason, the name that I just said, I'm now questioning. Okay, my brain's just kind of acting up, but the guy had like millions of people on YouTube and shit, and he convinced a fuck ton of people of anarcho-capitalism. Like he promoted it very effectively. And one time at a penthouse party in Anarchapulco, he approached me, double checked that I am who he thinks, and he told me that I'm the person that convinced him to become an anarcho-capitalist, and it wasn't even from me talking to it. It was he was reading the comments where I was debating a statist on Facebook, and just seeing my arguments, they convinced him, and he went on to influence millions of others. So it's like I didn't even know anyone was reading that debate, but that one debate ultimately had a ripple effect that led to like millions of people getting exposed to anarcho-capitalism.
Yeah, it's like, the remnant. You're appealing to the remnant.
Liquid Zulu changed my mind.
You used to be in Jew school, like Isaiah. Most likely.
I don't remember Isaiah.
Do you know Albert J. Nock? He wrote about
That rings a bell.
Al Pacino? What do you mean, bro? What do you mean, Al Pacino?
Al Pacino?
Yo.
What about Al Pacino?
All right, guys. You're the anarcho-capitalists?
Hell yeah, we are.
Hell yeah.
Yes. Oh, okay. I just remembered his YouTube name. The guy's YouTube name was That Guy T.
Nice.
Anyway, yes, we're a narco-capitalist. The guy who became a big ANCAP YouTuber, that turns out I made an ANCAP with arguing on Facebook, and he read the comments.
Nice.
Oh, that's dope.
So that, like, whatever debate I had a ripple effect that influenced millions of people.
It's awesome.
We need to legalize shrooms.
With people on the internet matter. Who would have guessed?
Sometimes it matters. Sometimes it helps.
We need to legalize shrooms.
I don't know much about how. I haven't heard much from anarcho-capitalism, so consider yourself my first. But I don't like the idea of privatized police and court and that kind of stuff. Like, that scares the crap out of me.
Oh, bro, you came to the right place.
Well, think about it like this. Right now, most people, I think, would agree, maybe yourself would agree, that politicians, generally speaking, tend to be totally corrupt, and they work for the highest bidder. And that means that the laws that get passed are being passed for the highest bidder, and therefore the laws that the police will be enforcing and that the courts will be upholding are being done by, are being decided by, for-profit private interests, big moneyed interests. And in this scenario, this government scenario, everybody is forced to fund it, and they have a monopoly. You're stuck with them. You're screwed. In the anarcho-capitalist scenario, there is no legislative body. There's no monopoly on law. There's not somebody who you can just bribe and now that's the law for all of the society. Instead, individuals choose for themselves what insurance company they're going to subscribe to, aka what police company. And that company, it's not offering to, we're going to go around and, round up everybody who's growing this plant or something, because that would be completely outside of even the financial scope for them to do. It wouldn't make any sense. They will offer to protect you and your stuff. That's much more manageable. That's a promise they can actually deliver on without encountering massive logistical hurdles that are roughly impossible to overcome for anything except a monopoly on force. So they'll offer to protect you and your stuff, and and your family, perhaps. And so yeah, they're private, but they don't have the same scope of potential tyranny that a state does. Like your Geico will not. You can't like hire Geico to do an Auschwitz for you. Does that make sense?
Okay,
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. I mean, I imagine. How big do you imagine these companies being? Because our companies right now are pretty fucking big. So
right now
you're kind of telling me this should be a world where like Amazon, like Jeff Bezos, is the closest thing we have to a president.
So, in modern American markets, I spent like 20 minutes making this point earlier, but it was a different person present. Modern American markets are artificially consolidated. That is to say, and I'm not gonna do the whole like 20-minute spiel on it again, but the TLDR version is right now we have a situation where companies, big mega corporations are able to grow well past the diseconomy of scale point that they could naturally grow beyond on the free market, or that would naturally be sustainable for them anyway on the free market. They can get way past that using the gun of the state to suppress their smaller competitors that are actually more efficient than they are, because they're closer to the optimum size for that business model. The more government intervention you have in a market, the more consolidated and oligopolized that market is, and therefore the larger are the largest players. The reverse.
Who stops a company who's polluting a river? Right, like
that would be
the owner.
It's not that you have to It's not. No, it's not exactly. It's that you're already subscribed to an insurance company, and you go to your insurance company and you report the damage. You, by the way, you're somebody who you own property on the riverfront or something like that. You're an interested party. In this scenario, in the Ancap scenario, there has to be an interested party who is pursuing litigation for the litigation to happen. There's no district attorney. There's no state's attorney or something. All law is civil law, where somebody is suing somebody else for damages. So you're a property.
There's no criminal penalties for anything?
It depends what you mean. So there's not a criminal law system as such. There is a civil law system, but in some cases the penalty might be execution if we're talking about murder, or slavery if we're talking about, a serious criminal who didn't pay the restitution after a certain amount of time or something. But in almost all cases, we're talking about restitution. That is to say, 99.9% of the time, ANCAP legal systems, legal penalties for criminals have been restitution.
Okay, and who decides what we go to for this civil case?
So let's say I'm the polluter and you're a property owner on the riverbank. I'm polluting the river. Right, so you have your insurance company, which is Geico. I have my insurance company, which is State Farm. Geico and State Farm, before the pollution even happened, but maybe even before I was born, Geico and State Farm have agreed on what court they are going to bring these kinds of disputes before when they arise between their policyholders. And that court
so what stops them from colluding?
It depends what you mean.
What if they decide that they can make a lot more money through, like, their algorithms predict that if they agree to go to a court that's going to always think of the company's bottom line first over the people, then they could both make way more money and just screw over other people.
They're always going to do that. We want them to do that. But these companies are dependent on people pursuing getting policies with those companies. You don't want to subscribe yourself to an insurance company that will not protect your rights over one that will. So it's law driven by market demand, and there's two sides of the equation with market demand in the case of pollution. There's the demand to be able to pollute, as in how much money it's saving me to just dump my waste in the river rather than having to deal with it properly, versus damage that it's imposing on you and the demand of you and everybody else on the riverbank and everybody else who might conceivably want to own property on a riverbank or something, to have security against being polluted against.
All right, hey guys, I'm gonna head off, guys. Have a good night.
At you to see if I understand.
Have a good night, everyone. I'm going to bed.